Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the regular scheduled meeting of the South Haven City Council. It's Monday, November the 7th, 2022, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. Invocation this evening is going to be given by Cantor and Vice President Lou Price of the First Hebrew Congregation. Good evening, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you for inviting First Hebrew Congregation.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here.
I forgive my look, but I'm playing Santa in December, and what else is a nice Jewish boy going to do on Christmas? I borrowed this from John Saxon, who writes a lot for Unitarian Church. Holy One, known by many names, beyond all names, Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Spirit of community, Spirit of justice. We ask your blessings on the people who've been called to lead the community in which we live, work, and play. Help them as leaders to not ask first, how do we fix this, but what do we need to learn? How might we need to change? And to whom do we need to listen? Remind them, because all forget from time to time, especially in the noisiness of what passes for political debate today, that they are not only leaders, but also servants, and that it's their responsibility and ours to serve the common good of all. Remind them that no matter where we live, everyone, gay, straight, transgender, black or white, Hispanic or Asian, Muslim, Jew, Hindu, Sikh, or atheist, is our neighbor, our sibling, and that throughout the ages, prophets have called the leaders of the people to respect and protect the least of those among us, our children, the elderly, the poor, those who are hungry, those who have no homes, those who are ill in body, mind, or spirit, the strangers and immigrants in our midst, those who live in the margins, those who are alone, those who are forgotten. Grant them us the wisdom and courage to know and do what is right, good, and true. May they and we speak out when it is time to speak out and listen, patiently and receptively when it is time to listen. May they and we always be guided by the spirit of community, by the spirit of justice, by the spirit of love. This we pray in the name of all that we hold sacred and holy, all that we hold good and right and true. May it be so.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you. And now, if you're able, I'd like to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call. Megan.
Jeff Arnold.
Here.
Wendy Onuki. Here. Joe Reeser.
Here.
Steve Schlock.
Here.
George Sleeper.
Here.
Letitia Wilkins. Scott Smith.
Here.
I'll make a motion to excuse Letitia Wilkins.
Second.
Motion and second to excuse Letitia Wilkins. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. She's excused. That takes us to the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is approved. Next, we're going to get an update on the Liberty Hyde Bailey Museum. Good evening. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen. Come on up.
We're going to share the podium. But good evening, City Council, Mr. Mayor, Manager, Department of Public Works, and of course the public who supports us so well here in the city. I'm also pleased to introduce our new director at the museum, Andrew. He'll talk a little bit later. He's joined us about 2 months ago to pick up and help put our pieces together as we go forward. Very brief update. It's been a few years, and a lot of things, some of you know, have gone on at the museum over the last 5 years. What we want to do is convey how grateful we are for the support we get for the gem on South Bailey Avenue, the museum and gardens. Yes, it now says "and gardens" because we're expanding the gardens and making it a better, more accessible place when the museum's closed, and it's a very nice backwoods. We look forward to continuing our collaborative efforts with the city and enhance the enjoyment for visitors and residents alike. I'd also like to give a very sincere thank you to Ann Long, who has stepped down from the board, Many of you know her and her many, many years of contribution. She continues to provide guidance as she is Ms. Bailey history. So she is very important to help convey that to Andrew as she's been working with me for the last 4+ years. I'd be remiss if I also didn't thank her late mother, Marie Doucette, who is one of the 3 ladies who helped save the museum years ago, even before Anne was born. She gave Anne and taught her the value of gardening and the love of Bailey. And without the 2 of them, my job taking over would have been much harder. Years ago, I saw a play with Cloris Leachman. In a one-woman play, the apple does not fall far from the tree. That talks about Anne and her mother. It's a wonderful legacy, and I look forward to additional support from Anne as we go forward. Updates. Earlier this year, we updated our 5-year plan so that we can look forward with our renewed board and plan how to grow and improve the museum and provide value. When approved next Tuesday, it will be posted to the website. Comments are welcome. It was quite an effort because it's been 7 years since the last 5-year plan was started, and we have virtually a whole new board with the exception of one of the participants. So it was quite a learning experience, as I'm sure a lot of your working committees go through. We expanded the board. You can find us on the website. We have MSU extension agents, outstanding artists, educators, and other museum directors. One of them. We've had a successful budding naturalist program for the last 2 years. Some of you may have seen Dr. Bailey out and about, including in the 4th of July parade with some of our students. He also has taught croquet down at the Riverfront Park. I believe he taught about 65 kids and some parents how to play croquet during a couple of the festivals that were held down there. We look forward to continuing his presence. We greeted all the 3rd grade classes this year. We missed it for 2 years. Often they find Dr. Bailey asleep on the porch when they arrive, and some of them remark, "I can't believe you're 150 years old." Anyway, it's very enjoyable, and it helps educate the kids a lot more effectively. And we hear that from the teachers, not just the kids who are having fun learning from a ghost of Dr. Bailey. We've been out and about at the Berrien County Historical Society, which is found on the web, their presentation. White Pine chapter of the Michigan Botanical Society at Calvin College in Grand Rapids, and several more venues to come. We're trying to get the word out beyond the community and share with other nature centers and other organizations. And frankly, I find it very enriching and enjoyable, so it'll continue. With that, improvements to the gardens. We redid the South Gardens. Some of you have seen them, I'm sure. Designed in a Bailey design that was created years and years ago, and we hope to continue to resurrect Bailey's designs for that garden. 3 years ago, we had a problem because some of the plants weren't grown that year because the nurseries shut down. So continue to stop by and look at it. It'll be improved every year. We have a new north fence installed for safety, as the old fence was not cemented in, and some kids would fall off the railings, so that's been resolved. It also has addressed a trespassing issue with the neighbor to the north, because we eliminated all the ways to get through the fence, and Mr. Postman is very happy about that. Last, we did improve the first 2,000 loop in our backwoods. For those of you who don't know, there's 2 acres of woods there and a lot of trails. The first loop of 2,000 feet, we dug out, packed it down, fabric, and better quality chips, so it's very safe to walk. We hope to add to that loop every year because there's 2 more loops to go, but we were fortunate to be able to get that done this year. We did also host the garden walk for the last 2 years. big contribution by the museum and the city to help the Garden Club with their biggest fundraiser of the year. So that's kind of some of the things that we've been doing for the last few years to stay alive, move forward, rebuild the board, and hire a new director. So with that, I'm going to let Andrew talk a little bit about where he came from and what he's hoping to do going forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
How's it going? My name is Andrew Osterman. I'm a graduate of Western Michigan University. My major was public history. I worked at the Grand Rapids Art Museum before this. So a couple of the things we've been doing is we held our first Halloween Boo Walk at the Bailey on Sunday. We had almost 50 young goblins and their parents for a frightening walk in the woods with pumpkins and scary lights, and that was on the improved pathway we mentioned earlier. We're looking forward. We made a plan to make the first interior modifications to 2 passageways to provide more accessibility inside the museum, and we want to make the north door more accessible and add an ADA compliant lavatory accessible from both the museum and the gardens. As all of you know, more plans are great as long as we are able to find the required funding. We are also hosting the MSU Extension Michigan Master Naturalist Program for the second time. This runs from April through October and is a widely sought program. The museum gained additional members when hosted in 2019 and 2021, and Dr. Bailey will also be hitting the road with our intent to reach far outside the South Haven community. Please join us at the museum, visit our website and Facebook page for updates. Please go to the website and click the Take Video Tour produced by MSU Virtual Science Fair. Thank you again for this opportunity, and are there any questions?
Questions?
Well, I know if you went to Western, you got a good quality education. Go Broncos.
Yeah, go Broncos. That's right. I see a Western shirt behind you there, too.
Oh,
So
all right.
you've got supporters in the room. Do you have a question?
I don't have a question, but as the council liaison for the Bailey Museum, I just wanted to say how amazing it is to have here, and I think you guys are doing great things, and I love seeing at the Halloween event all the families out enjoying the gardens, and I'm sure there'll be more of that to come, so I'm excited to be a part of that. And thank you for your work.
Yeah.
Quite welcome. Thanks for the support.
Dan, did you get the back door fixed? Is that-
Yes.
Okay, good. Bill Hunter's here. We could get him right now.
No, I'll wait.
Okay.
But thank you for the idea.
Very tactical. That's good. Yeah. Your Buddy Naturalist program is such a neat program. And all you guys do is great. So, and those trails are fun. I know I spent some time with the Boy Scouts out there cleaning them up. So nice trails.
And I remember that stick pick day, and it was really great. And then, of course, Bill Hunter wasn't so happy because there were 5 piles of
Piles of
really
sticks.
big sticks.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was a great pickup. When you mentioned BBN, the last 2 years, we've hired Surratt Nature Center and their naturalists to come up. They're a much better target educator for what we want to accomplish. The mothers and grandmothers did a great job over the last 6 years, but it's time to add to the science. They can bring animals. Okay.
Can't go wrong with animals.
Thanks again for the time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for all you're doing.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that takes us to the consent agenda, items A through J.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through J.
Second.
Motion is second to approve consent agenda items A through J. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call.
Arnold.
Yes.
Onuki.
Yes.
Reeser. Reeser.
Yes.
Schlock.
Yes.
Sleeper.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. Which takes us to new business. City Council will be asked to take the following actions regarding an ordinance to amend sections 1404, 1405, and 1718 of the City of South Haven zoning ordinance in order to regulate site plan review. So first, we're going to hold a public hearing.
I make a
Need
motion. I make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion second to open a public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. It is open. Griffin rushed right up. Is this you to introduce? Or
I can.
Do
Good
it.
evening,
Let's
everyone.
go. Good evening.
What we have before you all this evening is the continuation of the discussion of the proposed ordinance amendment regarding the site plan submittal requirements. It's commonly been referred to as the EIS ordinance amendment. So last month, City Council voted to introduce this ordinance this evening. We are looking for you all to hold the appropriate public hearing and then consider adoption of the proposed ordinance amendment sections. What this would do is kind of bring full circle some of the discussions that the city's been having over the last several months regarding the environmental impact statement requirement presently listed in our ordinance. There were some concerns after its adoption approximately a year ago that this requirement was overly restrictive and preventing some of the development that was being proposed in the city that was viewed as desirable. So as a way to strike a balance between that development and still ensuring that the appropriate information is being submitted to the Planning Commission when they're reviewing these developments, this ordinance was proposed. It lists several requirements in lieu of the EIS, the Environmental Impact Statement, presently listed in the ordinance that are considered more of the industry standard items such as Phase 1 environmental site assessments and so on and so forth. So I know we've discussed this one at previous meetings. I know the city attorney and I would be happy to do the best we can to answer any questions. But other than that, the next step would be to open and hold the public hearing.
Okay, we are at that point. So if anyone from the public would like to come up, any questions, just state your name and address, and you'll have up to 5 minutes.
You're surprised to
And good
see me
evening.
here, I'm sure. Nancy Nat, 125 Elkenberg. Words matter. I have written both the Planning Commission and City Council regarding the amended EIS that is up for public comment tonight. And I have asked that the word may be changed to shall in the following statement. If you look at page 119 of your agenda packet, under the section 1718, Environmental Site Assessment Reports, and scroll down to number 3, Additional Documentation. I will read directly from the proposed ordinance. Upon the recommendation of the city's environmental consultant, the zoning administrator or planning commission may require the submission of one or more of the following documents. And I'm going to go through quickly Phase 2 environmental, baseline environmental, and the proposed due care plan. That one word, may, gives final say on environmental issues to the planning commissioners or to the zoning administrator. I'm not sure why this is being done, but it is reckless. I am not sure why I have not received any follow-up to my emails sent to the Planning Commission, the City Council, or to the mayor concerning the amended EIS from back in October when I wrote to everyone. Mayor Scott, you said that you would make sure that the environmental issues would be a priority. Yet you are allowing either a zoning administrator or the Planning Commission to have final say in whether a contaminated property needs follow-up. The word needs to be changed. It should be worded that upon recommendation of the city environmental consultant, the Planning Commission and/or the zoning administrator shall require the following documentation. We have an environmental consultant whose job it is to make sure that properties that are contaminated are meeting the requirements set up by the state of Michigan. By using the word may in the statement, you are giving that control over to the city staff and planning commission who have no background in environmental policy, and you're opening the city up to potential liability. This is reckless and does not provide the needed oversight you promised. The city is moving backwards with the wording in this amendment. Our current EIS, which was unanimously approved last year, provided protection for residents. The amended EIS, which was instigated by developers and city staff, puts tax-paying citizens at environmental risk. Please, please, please change the word to shall and give our environmental consultant the ability to follow Michigan State environmental requirements to protect us from potential carcinogenic exposures. Words really do matter. I'm reading directly from the amended ordinance. So city staff, it is not necessary to spin this. It's one word, may to shall, and it makes a big difference. Please do the right thing and change the word from may to shall. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
David Veenstra, 1220 Monroe Boulevard. I support Nancy's point. I think that if the environmental consultant has concerns, they should be followed through. We're already streamlining the process, but to then leave it up to anyone in the city, I would support that point, that if there are environmental concerns that have been identified, then the city shall go through that process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Josie Dillon, 546 North Shore Drive. I have to concur. I understand that there are challenges here, but challenges are actually okay, especially when we're talking about possible environmental dangers and even carcinogens, which may be present in our town. When you protect our environment, you protect us. It's a huge responsibility. Fortunately, we have environmental consultants. I'm not sure what, Envirologic, I believe it's called. They're professionals. That's what we need. It doesn't make sense not to always defer to them. Members of zoning, planning, city staff, city council aren't really, we're not qualified. You're not qualified to make decisions regarding environmental matters. Why would you even want that responsibility? I noticed at the amendment presentation at the last city council meeting, the term desirable developments was used 3 times. I think we should be really careful here. And I definitely feel that you should change the wording, the language from may to shall. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dan Agnello, 964 Everett Parkway. I concur with everything that's been said for the last 3 speakers. And I'm going to go through the first item here about the EIS. I noticed in section 1404.14, traffic in the EIS was removed, and it said it could be required for certain projects. I'm not sure what that means, certain projects. That kind of leaves everything open. In 1405.1, civil requirements, line 3, yada, 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 such items, again, may be required. That's got to be changed to shall. In 1405.14, EIS, due care plan, and escrow are required again for a certain project, but I'm not sure what certain projects are. It's kind of vague. Okay, as was stated before, the zoning administrator should not be allowed to waive the requirements. That's a job for the PC. That's their task. Okay, and like we said, the PC and the ZA are not qualified. It should be the Envirologic should be making decisions on the environment. Okay, and I'll discuss some of the problems we had with that later. There's too much power given to the ZA and to some of these developers. Okay. Also in section 3, like Nancy discussed, again, changed the words from may to shall. And that includes the requirement for the environmental statement, the ESA, the baseline ESA, and the proposed due care plan. Okay? We run a lot of problems with this. In fact, with Trailside and Overton, okay? Trailside is contaminated, and so is Overton, and so is the lofts. They still have PCE in there, and so does Overton. Trichloroethylene, they're carcinogens, okay? And the environmental logic or environmental engineers are the ones that need to take care of this. And with all due respect, the city is not monitoring what's going on. And we've been through this many times. Eagle is. We have to call Eagle and have them go over to the other 4 houses on Engelberg, or Elkenberg, and make sure the gates are put up and the dirt piles are covered, because that's still contaminated. They got two piles of dirt they took off on Foundation 18, and it's been sitting there. Now, they did recover it again last week after all that wind, but again, it's blown off, and the fence going around it is all blown off and stuff. So maybe in another few days they will do that. But see, here's the problem. When Overton came in here, the residents had to indicate to the city that an EIS was required. So they went out in the hallway and talked to Fred, I guess his name was, from I can't think of his name now, from Habitat, and they said, oh, we're going to waive that because it's too late. We want to get our application in. It's too late. It's going to cost us $20,000. And they said, and it was just approved like a month or like 6 months before that. And if it's required, it's required. And we could not get a due care plan out of Trailside. There's no due care plan for my section in Phase 1, and then submit one for Phase 2. And it's supposed to be listed on the requirements for Phase 2, but I'll be talking to Kelly and whatever to find out what's going on with Trailside and making sure all those 12 conditions are met. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else?
Mary Hasley, 726 North Shore Drive. I'd like, at some point, confirmation of my correspondence, which I haven't gotten. And I just reiterate what other people have said, but I have to dive in a little bit deeper. It is really irrelevant how much time has been spent. The proposed amendments are not good for the city of South Haven for many reasons, but I am limited to just 5 minutes, so here are the top ones. Contrary to Attorney Curcio's representations at the last city council meeting, this is not consistent with the section being removed for when the ESA will be required. The original trigger was a structure or structures that are cumulative 85,000 square feet. It now just says a structure is 85,000 square feet. There is no creative interpretation that can occur to have these two phases be consistent. Staff routinely fails to keep the required records and present the required facts. I cannot even count how many times they have missed the specific section being removed, subsection 16. At least City Manager Hoser and Assistant City Manager Graham and their reports and staff reports. The Planning Commission staff reports have, I believe, always initially missed the required EIS, since it was unanimously recommended by the Planning Commission and approved by the City Council, as recently as last week. Well, after the proposed changes were recommended that the City Council is going to be ensured that records are going to be kept. In fact, track changes of 140416 are incorrect. And I informed staff on Thursday, and they're still incorrect. It doesn't even show subsection 16. The citizens have been deprived of the challenging the verbal allegations of compliance. I'm still baffled how this satisfies open meetings requirements. The zoning administrator discretion has not been earned, and that means not just the zoning administrator, but up through city manager. At most, the recommendation to the Planning Commission, who recommends to City Council under 1405-2 on page 125, with defined criteria. So submittal requirement waivers. It should be Planning Commission may recommend to waive one or more under subsection A. Under B, the zoning administrator needs to be stricken A, a person needs to be stricken under B, and details need to be provided for objective reasons to waive them. They're lacking. And we've already heard vagueness, and there's also imprecise, open, unclarified terms that leave too much discretion to staff. Another requirement to trigger the ESA under 1718-1B1, page 125, is when the site plan calls for construction of 3 or more new dwelling units. As I've pointed out to the PC and you, what is 3 or more dwelling units? Is it any building that has at least 3 apartments, condo, townhomes? Would it apply to the locker construction? Which? Similar issues are present with section 1405-1H on page 124, triggering the sound transmission. How many sound transmissions for proposed multiple family dwellings? How many buildings are required to provide multiple family dwellings? Let each one of you opine and what you think, or maybe Griffin could talk about it. How many different opinions will we have? The definitions provide no guidance. This is open to too much creative interpretation of when it should and should not apply. Then there's the discretion of staff with other documents that have already been discussed. At the very least, the brakes should be placed on these amendments until at least we have the results from the environmental studies to be conducted on the Overton site. The city received a $50,000 grant from Eagle to do environmental studies on Overton. The city's environmental consultant and Eagle have been discussing what needs to be done. They've been doing this since at least September 12, 2022, the date on which Mr. Graham informed the BRA of the city securing the $50,000 grant. Based on recent correspondence with Griffin, the studies are still under negotiation with Eagle. This in and of itself, the amount of time to even determine what should be done, should show how complicated this is and why such information should not be quickly dismissed and duplicative and unnecessary when talking about locations for housing on land with environmental concerns. Last but not least, under the OMA, if your vote today is based on any discussion behind closed doors, say in a phone call with the city manager to have questions clarified, then that must be part of the record. Registered voters deserve to know the facts upon which an elected official bases his or her vote.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Going once, going twice. Motion to close?
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All right, motion say to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It's closed. Which takes us to the next item. The City Council will be asked to consider the adoption of the proposed ordinance to amend sections 1404, 1405, and 1718 of the City of South Haven zoning ordinance in order to regulate site plan review.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed ordinances to amendment sections 1404, 1405, and 1718 of the city's South Haven zoning ordinance in order to regulate site plan review.
Second.
All right, we got a motion, we got a second. I know Griffin, Kate, can we start with there's a lot of discussion about the may versus shall. I know one of the concerns is there's a laundry list of things after, maybe, kind of like, can we start with that and then?
Sure, I think City Attorney Curcio is ready to discuss that question, and we're happy to add any more that
Sure.
may be
Yeah,
necessary.
it's a good starting point.
So the reasoning why it was written that way is the environmental consultant is a third-party consultant, not an employee of the city. The typical relationship with the consultant and city staff is that the consultant provides advice, and then the city staff, acts on that advice accordingly if they find it persuasive. We just wanted, the language just reflects that typical relationship. I suppose it could be changed from may to shall, but that would effectively be delegating authority to a non-city employee. Typically, under the zoning ordinance, the zoning administrator has the authority to make those kind of decisions, and the wording was just written consistent with that kind of general principle.
Okay.
I think I should also mention that when we first looked at the EIS, the permissiveness of may was originally in the ordinance for some period of time. I think that was the original drafting of it, was that not? Yes, the EIS that we changed in 2021 originally started out as may and had been on the
Yes,
books for
that's
that for
correct.
some time. What we had found is that this was out of step with what most communities require. Most communities, if they need to, if they were looking at a brownfield, go through the phase 1, phase 2, if there's any BEA or anything like that. So these things are well established through brownfield and under Act 381.
And while we're there, brownfields, because that's, we spent a lot of time talking about brownfields. There's not a may or shall when it comes to a brownfield. We don't have options. You have to go through those steps. I'm kind of getting off
Yes
topic.
and no. So that there are state laws in place regarding the management of brownfield sites. To go through the city's brownfield process, we have a brownfield redevelopment authority to go through the brownfield redevelopment authority, which is a financing authority. It's a redevelopment tool. That's an option. A property owner can buy or own a brownfield in the city of South Haven. They don't have to go to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority to seek TIF financing to reimburse costs. Notwithstanding, they're still responsible for the due care obligations on that site.
Right, that's not negotiable. So I just want to make sure we're clear that that's, we're not trying to get around cleanup of sites. I think there's.
Yep, the management of sites
Exception.
is dictated by state law.
Right. Just want to make sure we're clear on that.
I feel like I think it'd be a good move to change it from may to shall, just so that there aren't any question marks of whether we're going to follow the consultant's advice. I understand what you're saying about the delegation of decisions, but to me, just having that in there to make sure that we're doing it, I think that would just help make everyone feel more comfortable with it, and I would like that.
And that's up to the city council, so it's up to you.
Oh, Joe, go ahead.
I have a pretty simple question. What is the downside of changing that? We've had errors, I'll put this very nicely, from city staff on different issues. And it's been said, well, they're inexperienced, they're learning. My worry is having the zoning manager make the decision, because they could under shall, but if you, under may, but if you make it shall, then it has to go to an expert. So I'm trying to figure out what would be the downside of changing it from may to shall, meaning the environmental expert would have to make the decision, or we change it to the environmental expert and the planning commission, but not the zoning administrator. Putting all that in one person when we have so many people here worried about the environment, is there a downside to changing it?
I think the city attorney discussed the reasoning. The language was drafted the way it was, but the decision to change it from may to shall, that's up to you all. That's going to be a value-based question that you all can decide.
Any other thoughts, comments?
I'm ready.
Right.
My worry is the designation to the third party. The bottom line, if the environmental consultant is the third party, I agree with the city attorney that I don't want to leave that out of a non-city paid or staff position. The bottom line it comes down is if we don't have faith in our staff or our zoning administrators, then we need to deal with that on a separate issue. At a certain point, we have to have faith, and we need to allow them to do their job. So if we don't have faith in them, we need to deal with that on a separate issue, whether it be city manager, zoning administrator, or anything else. But to leave that and change, and you can look through this whole ordinance, there's so many mays that if you change them all to shalls, it's going to have the complete opposite effect than what the first woman spoke on the number 3 issue. Because there's a lot of mays in there that would switch the whole thing, that the staff wouldn't have to do anything. So to switch every may to shall, we're going to have to discuss the whole ordinance. My point being, very simply, is that I don't want to leave somebody that's not responsible to the city of South Haven in a position that can be bought, paid for by an enemy of mine when I'm trying to develop a property, period. And that's what may to shall will do. So therefore, I agree with the city attorney on that.
Anything else? Anybody else? Okay. There's no other questions. I guess
I had some other stuff.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Fire.
On the may to shall thing or on anything?
No, the whole
okay.
thing. Open for discussion.
Okay. Where am I here? I gotta look it up. I did want some clarification about the thing that Mary brought up about the cumulative, sorry, square footage. Is it the total of the square footage to be 85,000 square feet? And do we need to have that in there?
So as written, this draft ordinance it is just for a single building. It says a structure with at least 85,000 square feet. And the commenter from the public is correct that it used to say structure or structures. I don't honestly recall when that change was made or that being discussed by the Planning Commission, but that is true. If that's something the City Council is concerned with, that's, could refer that back to the Planning Commission for discussion of whether that needs to say or structures cumulatively, or whether that number needs to be changed to some other level. That's something the council could discuss.
Okay. I don't know if that's problematic or not.
So I don't have a problem with it, but anybody else at this point in time?
Is there a middle ground on that? I take Steve's point. It's a good one. I don't like to always delegate to a third party, and I think if we have a problem with someone making errors, then we have to resolve that too. I get that. The other side is there's an expert you would think would know better than a staff position is doing many different roles. Is this possible to have it in a way where the third party and the staff or the third party and planning commission have to agree on it, or is it an either or?
I would suggest the language is already kind of a middle ground. So we have automatic triggers for the phase one being required. When the phase one is required, the city has to share that with the third party consultant. And there's an escrow required, so that review is paid for by the applicant. And then the consultant is going to prepare a report on that phase one ESA. And the report is going to presumably say whether or not the consultant believes additional documentation is needed. So there will be a public record of the consultant's recommendation, and then at that point, the zoning administrator determines whether or not to follow that recommendation. That makes it public, puts some checks and balances into the system, but then puts the ultimate authority to require that further documentation in the hands of a city employee. So that's the way it's set up. It's set up under the proposed language.
Would we be able to add something that would require some kind of written or public explanation as to why they're not following the recommendation in those instances?
I suppose so, or the planning commission could ask for that as well, because the planning commission can always ask for additional documentation the zoning administrator does not require.
Then I just have one more point, which is on page 119 and 125, I think Dan brought it up, where it says the zoning administrator or planning commission may waive one or more submittal requirements. Is there a reason that it can't just be the planning commission, so it's a group of people versus one person making that decision?
So this particular provision is about when items are determined just not pertinent to the application. And I believe there was an application recently where I saw this language. Sometimes there's requirements that just have nothing to do with, I think there's maybe like wetlands, for example. If there's no wetlands on this site, there's no reason to provide wetland mapping. So the zoning administrator or the planning commission would have the authority to waive that requirement. I think that's a fairly common one that it's used for. It doesn't allow, this language doesn't allow the waiver of things just because they think it's overly burdensome or something like that. It has to be actually totally inapplicable. And again, if the zoning administrator waives something and the planning commission thinks it's not inapplicable, then the planning commission could at that point come back and waive. The reason for having the zoning administrator have the ability to do it is that we're not having, that can be done before the plans are actually submitted. Whereas if it's the planning commission, you already have full plan submitted, and you'd have to come and ask for a waiver from the applicant. and then go back and do new plans for another meeting. It just adds an extra meeting into the process potentially.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're following a good order. That makes sense.
I'm trying to figure out your question about if they're not following the recommendations of the consultant, kind of what's the trail of that?
The paper trail?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, if they're not being followed, it would be X. I mean, your question was, could we?
Oh, have
Like an explanation.
require an affirmative reason?
Right, whatever that, I'm just trying to figure out a way to,
We could require the zoning administrator to articulate the reason in a report to the planning commission or something like that.
PC and city council, I don't know, okay. Okay. So that's a possibility, if there was interest.
George, since you're on the planning commission, do you feel okay with the May language?
I do feel it's okay with the May language for the reasons that the city attorney talked about. And yeah, I'm good with the language the way it is right now. And everything I had brought up at Planning Commission has already been incorporated, so.
All right. Then if we got nothing else, let's vote it up. How's that sound? I've got no other suggestions, amendments, so I've got a motion. I've got a second. Why don't we go ahead and roll call?
Onuki,
No.
Reeser,
No.
Schlock,
Yes.
Sleeper,
Yes.
Arnold,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, that passes. Let's go ahead. Let's roll to our next one there. Thanks, everybody, on that. All right, City Council will be asked to take the following actions regarding a proposed ordinance to add a new article, Section 4, entitled Storm Sewer. And again, we need to hold a public hearing.
Make a motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, public hearing is open. Who wants to kick it off? I know Bill's here, but Kate, you want to kick it
Go ahead,
off?
Bill.
or-
Thank
Welcome
you, Your Honor,
back.
City Council. In front of City Council today is a stormwater, based on actually the last meeting we had with City Council on October 17th. We're listening to City Council, made a few minor revisions to the ordinance you see in front of you. One of them is actually an effective date, putting it out to January of 2023, which allows us, if passed by City Council, we could actually publicize this to the community, reach out to some areas that we know might be affected. We put some clarification in there about the violation being a nuisance per se, so the team can seek abatement rather than fines. And we did addressed actually emergency flooding, which was brought up by one of the council members. Again, what we're discussing here is discharges to the surface of the road. I had some questions where people were concerned we were just going to start going out and requiring people to tie on, and that's not the case. What we're looking at is somebody that's discharging that discharge or pumped water is going over a sidewalk, over a curb, into the street, and then traveling down, where they could actually, there is a storm sewer available in the front of their property. That's what we're talking about here. It's something very simple. I mean, right now, we have no mechanism. So right now, if somebody wants to build a house and it's cheaper for them to put a pop-up valve and discharge and shoot it right across the sidewalk and over the curb into the gutter, they can do that. I have nothing I can't force them to tie on.
Appreciate that. Well, we're at the public hearing part, so if anybody from the public would like to comment on this, come on up, state your name and address. You'll have up to 5 minutes.
Won't take me long. I don't know how to put this, but it has to do with the drainage issue, because Overton, after the remediation was done at the factory condos and the path was put back in on the trail, whoever put the trail back in changed the sewage route, not sewage, but the storm drainage into the factory condos storm line. And it's been brought
to the city through the board at the factory condos. And I am wondering why that was allowed and if it will be drained into the city storm drainage like it's supposed to be.
Maybe Bill can get back on that one. That's actually not what we're talking about here, because they're not, I mean, yeah, so.
Well, he was talking about pop-up valves and all that other stuff, so it's kind of.
We're
people
talking about
putting in things
discharging
they
from a
shouldn't be.
resident, so.
Well, that's.
And Bill can get your information, maybe contact you back on that one. It's not what we're talking about right now. All right, anybody else want to talk about this issue? Again, this is storm drains, tying into storm drains. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Mike Campbell, 216 Erie. I was not at the October 17th meeting when this was introduced, so if I am duplicating any questions, please accept my apology. But these are mostly yes and no, and I'm happy for the answers to come during my 5 minutes. So the first question is this. I see a number of drains coming through the curb into the gutter that represent groundwater being pumped from a sump pump inside of a house. I presume that would be a violation that this is trying to address. Is that correct?
It would be if actually those pop-up valves, there's a, say that what they're discharging to in that right-of-way, there's a storm system. The ones that were actually somebody is discharging to and there's not a storm system available, those ones will be able to continue like they always have.
Okay. Where those exist as an infraction, I'll come back to as another question at the end. The other thing that you're addressing, I presume from reading the materials, is that you don't want anyone to tie their sump pump into the sanitary sewer and overcharge the sanitary sewer, correct?
Yes, that is actually an existing ordinance through SHASA that's not allowed. You cannot discharge actually groundwater into the sanitary system.
So that is an existing ordinance, so we don't need a prohibition in this one?
Correct.
Okay.
That's an existing
Okay.
one.
There are, in my neighborhood, many building projects where after the basement is dug, there's groundwater that comes up and fills the basement 6-8 inches deep. And then for several weeks, or in some cases, like in the 100 block of Erie, for several months, there is drainage that comes from those basements out over the sidewalk and the parkway and drain into the gutter. And that's just piping. How does this attempt to address those kinds of discharges?
This one only really addresses permanent installs. I think what you're referring to is like construction projects. And that would be a more in-depth actually ordinance where we would probably require, like, for example, illicit discharge, best management practices on like proper ways of discharges. We've addressed some of those when I get input on them, like, for example, if they're crossing a sidewalk and blocking it, they're not supposed to do that. So we'll get a hold of the contractor and tell them you need to divert it, find another way around it. But it doesn't actually, this ordinance won't address anything with construction.
Okay. And then going back to the first instance of the drainage coming out of the curb right into the street and draining over to a drain that goes into the storm sewer, that is something that would be treated as a violation of this. So then how are you going to address all of those violations within the city that it currently exists? How do you plan to cause those infractions retroactively now to be connected?
Most of the ones that actually over the years that I've received have been ones like what you're describing are people that don't have actually a storm within their right-of-way where they can butt. So that's something we're not going to be looking at. The ones, maybe the few that we know are existing, if this ordinance are passed, I will reach out and communicate with them and work with them and give them time actually to come up with a plan to connect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Anybody else?
Mary Hasley, 726 North Shore Drive. So when this first came out, I had inquired about how many residents were known to violate this, and I was told of one, but it sounds like there's actually more than one. Or is it still just the one on Monroe?
It's just the one on Monroe. What that gentleman was referring to is people see pop-up valves that I've responded to over the past, and every time I've communicated back to the individuals concerned, those individuals or the properties discharging didn't have a storm to discharge to.
Okay, got
And
it.
to answer your question on the one on Monroe, I've been told actually that that property did some grading in the back, so I don't think they're going to be discharging anymore.
Okay. And then the amendment for the exception, it says, upon request, blah, 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 it shall not exceed 3 consecutive days for the purpose of removing water from a structure following a flooding event. What is a flooding event? Is it just high water? Is it the house had a flood, pipes broke, natural, what?
I would say probably all those things you just mentioned there, that, and it could be anything, could be pipes broke, for example. There'd be some kind of a flooding event. Now, mind you, if they had some kind of flooding event that would require actually like sanitary sewage, then they'd have to get a hold of some kind of company to do
Right.
that. But it'd have to be only something that I would say groundwater related. So I would say pipe burst or something, or maybe there has been some, especially with the lake levels being high, which actually did cause actually a lot of higher groundwaters in the area, which did cause a lot of flooding. So maybe situations like that, maybe sump pumps failed.
Well,
we would work with that.
So it sounds like it actually might need some clarification to ensure that it's just groundwater flooding. And depending on how bad it is, 3 consecutive days may not be enough. You may want to incorporate that may be extended for a reasonable amount of time. Just trying to find where things can be applied differently to different individuals, because we have seen that happen to people in the city, which drives a wedge between our community and is not helpful for the health of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. Close.
I'd make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All right, motion is second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is closed. All right, next. City Council be asked to consider the adoption of the proposed ordinance to regulate groundwater discharge within the city.
I make a motion to pass the ordinance to regulate groundwater discharge within the city.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Discussion.
Bill, do you think we need to define flooding in there?
I mean, flooding is, yeah, basement's flooded. I mean, we can only discharge groundwater to a storm system, so I don't think we need to define that, I would say.
Okay.
I think the point was to give you guys flexibility in case someone has an event. You're not going to rush in and say, you got to fix this imminently, right? I mean, the point was to give you flexibility.
Yeah, because you just grabbed a pipe burst or sump pump fails, but it could be something we can't imagine, and you still want to have the flexibility to help them out of that situation. And Ms. Hulsey mentioned 3 days, and it sounds like you could even extend the 3 days if it was catastrophic and they needed it, right?
That's correct.
You led off by saying, well, shoot, where was your notes? That you were, and you weren't going to go with the fines right away. You mentioned that this was going to be a nuisance violation per se, and the team can seek abatement rather than fines. And so it sounds like you're really trying to work with people more than being punitive.
Correct.
And help them out of trouble situations, and this allows you to do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody else? Yeah, this makes sense. I mean, I'm aware of the house that was discharging across the sidewalk. I think I think staff does this, but when we're constructing new roads, just to make sure we're talking to homeowners, because when you're constructing the road and all those pipes are exposed, and especially when you're running laterals into the house, it's a great time to connect. I think a lot of times we have folks that just figure, well, I'm not going to deal with it at this time, versus it's pennies on the dollar when you're running a piece of PVC from your house to the road at the time versus after the fact. I know, because we did it in our last house, and we had to go and had it bored, and it wasn't cheap, but still we did it. So I think it makes sense to at least give you guys some ability to make sure that people, especially when you're doing road construction, it's a good time to discharge those things properly. So that's the point. We got a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is approved. All right, next couple special events. City Council, thanks, Bill. We asked to consider the approval of the following special event applications. First, special event 2022-26, Break the Ice 5K Frosty Dash 2023, to be held on February the 4th, 2023, from 10 a.m. until 12 p.m., beginning at Eagle Street and Kalamazoo Street to end at the South Haven Marina. Burr.
Recommend a motion to approve the Break the Ice 5K Frosty Dash 2023.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All right. Kate.
Sure, this is a walk, run, 5K event. The route will be the same as in previous years. The race is put on by the South Haven Public School cross-country program as a fundraising event. This will be taking place, as you said, February 4th from 10 a.m. It's going to be a cold morning, but it'll be part of the Icebreaker Festival.
Very good. Public questions on this one? Participants? Any volunteers? One volunteering? Council? Questions, comments? Volunteers? No one yet? All right. Motion second to approve event, special event 2022-26. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is on. Next special event 2022-27, which is the Holiday in the Park 2022, to be held on November the 25th, 2022, from 4 p.m. until 7 p.m., to take place at various locations throughout the downtown at South Beach and Dykeman Park.
Make a motion to approve special event 2022-27, Holiday in the Park 2022.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Kate.
So this will be a number of different events that'll be occurring in our downtown. They'll have Holiday in the Park, which will be the 25th, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Lots of family activities, pet parade, pictures with Santa, coffee and dessert vendor, ice skating, Christmas music in the park. They're also talking about the Flameless Luminaries, which will be sold for hospice at home. We'll place those along Phoenix Street and Water Street. Luminaries will be kept up through the weekend, weather permitting. And then Hospice at Home will be responsible for picking up and disposing of those luminaries. It's a great holiday time, and we're happy to have these items before the council. There also is a parade, and we do plan to have a police escort for that.
And it's just like 2 weeks away, which is kind of scary. Yeah. All right. We've got a motion. We've got a second. Is there any other public questions, comments on this one? Nothing. Council questions or comments? Nothing. I'll just thanks to everybody for putting that on. And motion and second to approve special event 2022-27. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It's approved. All right, next, City Council will be asked to receive an update from the Local Officers Compensation Commission, and we'll have them present their findings. Who's the lucky participant? Good evening. Good evening, Rosalie.
Hey, good evening, everyone. We're here tonight again to discuss compensation for elected officials. Last year, we were shot down right off the bat without the opportunity to present really good information that we spent time preparing, hence this different approach this year. Now, please let me make clear that this isn't about job performance or an altruistic gift. It is a well-established process that is part of our charter. My colleagues will take it from here. Dana? Oh.
Yeah. Thanks, Rosalie. Woke me up. Dana Hollinger, 1443 Clark Place. Okay. So, as you recall, last year when we made the recommendation for a small increase for the compensation for both council members and mayor, we had taken the time to do a lot of research, and people, initially they wanted us to really look at and compare ourselves to other communities, lakefront communities, other communities in Michigan. It's this idea of kind of searching for what ought to be the compensation for locally elected officials, because this hasn't been, the positions have not, compensation has not changed since 2008. So we did a quick look. We received data from Michigan Municipal League, took a quick look at some of the data, and I just want to share with you guys. In the data from Michigan Municipal League, it's got 108 cities, so not every city in Michigan participates. We've got 108 cities, all the way from a small little town of 200 up to Lansing, Michigan. So when we look at South Haven in terms of the population of South Haven that was recorded in those data, it says that South Haven was about the 49th largest of the 108 cities. So it's a way of saying we were somewhere almost in the middle of those 108 cities in population. And we'll get to a little bit, does the size of a city suggest what the compensation ought to be? We'll get to that in a minute. When we looked at the tax value of South Haven in those data, for the most current data, it showed a tax value, so we say an assessment value, of almost $500 million. These data showed South Haven at $497.5 million. In those data, in the 108 cities, South Haven ranks 86th largest in those 108 cities. So think of yourself, we're at about the middle of population, at 49, 86th largest in terms of the tax value of this city. So you think about the value at risk, the value of opportunity that this city faces is huge compared to its size. South Haven, we looked at budgeted expense. This is where cities would say this is what our budget's going to be, our expenditure budget, not revenue budget for the coming year. In those data, South Haven was shown as having about a $10 million budget expense. And again, if you compare this to all 108 cities, we're ranking about 84th. So again, South Haven has a lot of assets, almost $500 million. It has a significant budget because it does a significant amount of work. In addition to just managing the city, I think some of the other work that we do with our power, electricity, the water, things like that, say that it's a city council, it's a city government, city staff that really has to address a lot of complexity, a lot of size issues that aren't really identified when you just look at population. We play bigger than our weight, if I was going to put it in a sports term, much bigger. So, but when we looked at just for city council members, but they separate the day between council and mayor, but they follow. But in terms of city council, what we pay our councilmen, we rank 34th of the 108 cities. So we're somewhere in the middle in population. We're up in the high 80s, we could say 80 percentile, in terms of the tax value of the city, the budget of the city, and we're paying our council people, like in the 34 something. So it's just that kind of landscape view, those big contours say, it probably doesn't feel right. It feels like we probably don't have the right compensation level when you look at it those ways. So we dug a little deeper. We asked ourselves, is it just all simply about population? Like the more people you have, the more you should pay your council. So we looked at all 108 cities, and we took a tranche of cities whose population, in these data, we were about 4,000 people. So we took a tranche of cities that were in about between 3,000 and 5,000 population, right? So 1,000 more, 1,000 less than us. And if you just run a simple linear regression, you say population should explain how much you pay your council. Well, first of all, the regression coefficients are really weak. It says that population probably only explains less than 10% of why cities pay their councils what they pay them. It says there's other factors out there, and population's a weak predictor. We then said in those data there were 7 other cities, we call them the West Michigan Lakefront cohort, like Ludington and cities like that. We could find 7 of them in the data. And we said, well, let's just compare ourselves to those lakefront cities, because they're like us. They got the same problems, maybe not on the same scale, but the same problems. Again, the regression coefficient, the R-squared, gets better. It says among the 7 lakefront, population is a better predictor. It probably explains about 65% of why council people are paid what they're paid, the position, not the person. But in both cases, and I'll share the data afterwards, the dot for South Haven is very far below the mean value. So the data says it's not a strong predictor to begin with, but even so, we're way below, we're what the regression mean would suggest we should be for, in this case, a population. Did the same thing with taxable value. And this is crazy because this puts us up in a league with places like, almost like Lansing or East Lansing, Muskegon, some of these other towns. So we looked at 10 Michigan cities with a tax valuation between $300 million and $600 million. So we can put our 497, almost 500, kind of in the middle. Again, tax valuation, basically the wealth of the city, is not a strong predictor of how councils are compensated. And we did the same thing with the 7 West Michigan cohort cities. We looked at tax value and it's even weaker. So, but again, in both those comparisons, while it's not a strong predictor, South Haven always plays way below the mean value, way below the regression line. And the same thing plays out in terms of budgeted value. So kind of the bottom line on this, if you want to say, well, let's compare ourselves to other cities, what do they do? One of the first thing you have to understand is these aren't strong indicators. Probably taken together, if you could do multivariate regression, add a few other things in, you'll find the thing that explains why do cities pay what councils pay. So there's no prescriptive answer in comparing us to other cities. There really isn't. But I think there's a directional answer, definitely, when we look at the data. And the direction is always up. That South Haven tends to be far below the line, far below the mean, if you will, when you look at us on any of those measures: population, tax base, budgeted expenses for the city. So I'd say because it's directional but not prescriptive, deterministic, it says take that directional thing, says, and then we ask ourselves, what should explain it? And that's where we get back to roles and responsibilities, duties and demands. And so we ask ourselves, have the roles and responsibilities, the duties and demands of the council changed since 2008? Has the situation become more challenging, more difficult? Are you facing problems today that the council, I don't think anyone here was on council in 2008, than what they were facing in 2008? So we think the stakes are higher today. We think that because you also all have assignments on various commissions and boards, in addition to these two Monday nights a month, that the job is probably much bigger than that last time that the compensation was looked at in 2008. So we do think it needs to be looked at again as far as a slight increase. The other thing I think that we were all concerned about in our discussion, I wish my back wasn't to everybody, but it is. The last time we were here, a council person who's not on the council anymore immediately opened the session by saying that person didn't need the money. He said it a couple times. He didn't need the money, so he didn't need an increase. And that's genuine, that's honest. That was that person's personal kind of perspective on this. He didn't need the money. Our concern that we didn't express at that time, I think it's because our jaws dropped. We were all in shock. We weren't expecting to hear that. Was that we have to be very careful in making that distinction between your personal situation, your personal wealth, your personal needs or not needs, because this is not a needs test, against your personal situation and public policy. And one of the concerns I think we might have if we go too long without recognizing the increasing demands, the increasing responsibilities, is that we could inadvertently set up a situation where only those who don't need the money take the position. And that would be exclusionary. That could say there could be many, many people in the community for whom that wasn't their personal status. So we don't want this to become a deterrent to diversity, equity, and inclusion in our staff, in our agencies, in any of these roles. So it's thinking about it again, not from our personal needs, but really from more of a public policy. Is this a situation where we've reached a point almost 15 years later where we do need to look at what was regrettably a small increase in the compensation, but an increase that tried to recognize, again, the responsibilities of roles, the difficulties and demands, that you all face in your jobs. And God knows we've seen some of that here tonight, the challenges you face. I don't think people were thinking that we'd be facing these things in 2008, the last time these policies were set. So that's a quick look. We can provide any of the data, if Kate, however we can do that, but we can provide the data we looked at, how we drew our conclusions and analyses and things like that. So I think we'll be coming forward at the next council meeting with the actual, here's the numbers. It's the same as we gave you last year. I'll spoil the story. It's the same as last year. But we'll be coming forward with that. But we just wanted to try to use this time to make that appeal to you, to think about it broadly, to first understand comparisons to other communities are directionally helpful, but they're not prescriptive. And that we do need to really think about all the demands, all the responsibilities you guys face. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate all of your work.
Okay, thank you.
Very much.
Thanks. Dana spoke to this, but lastly, just let me explain why this increase is also about the diversity, equity, inclusion. It's a topic that you've made a priority. to include everyone who wants to serve but may not be in a position of, gosh, we didn't even know we received compensation. I urge you, our council members, to remember that even though some members may possess the assets to meet these extra expenses, some highly qualified future candidates may not. Our group is looking to the future. And we hope that all citizens of South Haven who wish to volunteer their time and effort to help our city are able to do so without being hindered by their socioeconomic status. So thanks for your time. I know it's a long meeting. I hope that these facts resonate with you the next couple of weeks, and we'll be back to hear about your decision. So thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thanks to all of you. All right, let's go on. Everybody okay go for another minute? Good, okay. All right. City Council will be asked to discuss a proposed fee schedule and escrow policy for the building department.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have Griffin Graham, and we have Lene Wells from Aligned Planning. Earlier this year, Council authorized a professional services agreement with Aligned Planning to provide supplementary planning, zoning, and development services. And since then, Lene has been here helping us review some of our policies, and we have an attached memorandum from Lene, as well as she is here to kind of run through what the recommendations are with this proposals.
Sure.
Griffin, do you
I'm
have
going to
anything?
give just a little bit more background, and then I'll turn it over to the real star of the show. But to start, this is a project that we've been looking to undertake in the building department for a year plus at this point, and it's one of those projects that, fortunately or unfortunately, with all the other exciting things going on in the community, we hadn't been able to advance. So this was one that really shifted to the top as a priority when City Council graciously allowed us to get some additional help to advance some of these building department projects with the hiring of Aligned Services earlier in the year. So with that being said, and really consistently with what Kate just mentioned, this is what city staff and Aligned Planning have been working on since August, and we, I guess quite similarly to what was just presented to you all before, we're not going to be looking for any formal action from the council at this time. Instead, we are just hoping to introduce to you all what our proposed changes are. We'd be happy to answer any questions at this time. If there are any concerns or anything we can work on between now and the next meeting, our plan at this point would then be to bring back the formal ask or the recommendation at the November 21st meeting. So with that being said, I am really pleased to turn it over to Lene Wells. We're very fortunate to have had her help with this. Lene is a renowned planner in our state, and we've really appreciated her help.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm humbled.
Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here today, Mr. Mayor and council members. As Griffin mentioned, my name is Lene Wells. I'm a community planner, urban planner. I have my own planning firm, but I have spent the last 17 years working in West Michigan. I led a planning department, the Williams & Works Planning Department in Grand Rapids, and then moved off of that 3 years ago to start my own firm, so I'm happy to be here. I've worked in the city before on the Center Street project, and I've also worked in several Michigan lakefront communities up and down the coast, from Traverse City all the way down to New Buffalo in the 18 years that I've been doing planning work. And what we're here today to do is to create a predictable system that the city can use that would help not only the development community, but also the planning department to be able to provide a level of service that is kind of transparent, it's predictable, and it's a way to recover the costs associated with development. We like to say that development really does need to pay its way in the community, and we need to make sure that the costs are recovered for that development, any development project, so that there's not a burden on the general fund. We know that the general fund is tapped to do many things in the community, and the residents here have spoken to some of those priorities that they've had, and we want to make sure that that general fund is for those purposes, and that when development is being considered here in the community, that the costs associated with reviewing those development projects, be it planning services, attorney services, environmental services, those are borne by the applicant proposing that project. So what we have before you is an escrow policy that would enable that type of predictable cost recovery. It doesn't take the place of the application fees and the basic services that the city would provide when it comes to notification, when it would come to the back and forth conversations that applicants might have with the planning department. Instead, it's for those above and beyond costs associated with development. So we've included for you in the resolution the types of projects that would require an escrow deposit. We're asking that that deposit be $1,500 and that at no point would that deposit be under $500. And when it does fall under that threshold, there would be a conversation with that applicant to replenish that amount. These escrow policies are very customary in Michigan. All of the communities I've worked for have this type of policy in place. It is something that is, as I mentioned, commonplace, and the development community is used to these escrow policies. It is not something unheard of. The resolution also states that, again, those basic fee amounts would be, or those basic application fees would be, would cover notification, the newspaper, hearing notices, basic staff time for taking minutes and agenda preparation, packet preparation. But when there are more in-depth, when there's more in-depth research and analysis necessary, perhaps there's an instance where the city needs to work with an outside consultant, those costs will be recouped and paid for by that developer and that applicant instead of, again, the general fund. The resolution includes guidelines for refunding the unused portion of that escrow, and it also includes a grievance process if there was a case where the applicant wanted to dispute any of those charges or any of those fees, so there would be a way to handle that. We also had the city's attorney review the policy before you and the fees, and they made some adjustments and found, though, that the fees and the policy were in line with what is expected and, again, customary throughout the West Michigan lakefront community. So we have the resolution before you, and again, the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act allows communities to charge and create escrow accounts and utilize outside services for development review. So it's enabled in that act. Also, your zoning ordinance speaks to escrow. We haven't had a consistent way of handling it until this proposal and this policy has come forward. So this is not something entirely new. So the policy is included in your packet. It intends to, again, provide that predictability for the development community, for applicants, and for staff. We've also included a proposed fee schedule for you to consider. This fee schedule is based on analysis of other communities and their fees that they're charging. It also takes into account the true staff time required to review applications. We know that the cost of services has gone up, inflation has gone up. We want to keep up with those costs as well and ensure that we're recovering all of the effort that we're putting into it, because we want to continue to provide that high level of service. So I'm happy to take any questions that you might have with this, and yeah, I'm here.
Any questions?
Just one question is, when would the new fee schedule be implemented? If we voted it, approved it basically at the next meeting, when would it take effect, or?
The way the resolution is written, it would take effect upon the adoption of the resolution, so it would take effect immediately. But I think that's a good question, and a note I want to add with that too is something that we found as going through this process was the building department's fee schedule, at least historically, has not been reviewed and updated annually. That is something to avoid, situations like this again in the future. We are trying to create more of a consolidated fee schedule. As you can see here, it's quite consistent with the fee schedule we've had in the past, but we've also started to add some other of the related fees, right-of-way permit fees, land division fees to this, and starting to work towards a consolidated fee schedule that will be able to be reviewed and adopted by City Council annually, likely as part of their budgeting process. So you will notice this is considered a fiscal year 2022-2023 fee schedule. We would expect something similar to be brought before you all annually moving forward.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. Not sure if I'm going to word this correctly, but if someone was an aggrieved party applicant for an appeal, would they still be subject? I mean, should they still be subject, or would they still be subject to the escrow?
Can you clarify what you mean by an aggrieved party in an appeal?
I guess if someone is not the direct person doing the development, but they're simply reacting to a development project.
This is going to pertain to applicants. So I guess
that would include those parties trying to.
If they're applying for something, it could apply to them. So if you look at the top of the escrow policy, so I'm on page 163, it starts by listing the different types of applications where the escrow policy would apply. I think another important note of why this change is being proposed is because obviously we are trying to strike a balance of maintaining the availability of these services, and at the same time, as Lene mentioned, making sure that development is paying its way and that appropriate costs can be recovered. So a few of the things we were looking at and why we ultimately decided to propose this fee schedule and escrow policy system is because there are other communities we have looked at. They're quite rare now that don't use this escrow system, but their fees can be quite higher. And we want to be cautious about having fees raised to the point that they're unattainable for certain people. So instead, by creating this hybrid system, if you will, you've got your set base fee that hits those certain things such as the newspaper posting, the cost of the meetings, and so on and so forth, and then the escrow policy that can vary based on the true cost of that project.
Okay. Any other questions up for review? I do like the fact that we'll start going over these annual. I think that comes up with a few of our, different fees. So
and it'll be a transition from what our present practice is. I know I've worked in some communities as well that have these in place, and we have consulted with our finance department to make sure that they're on board and that they have the capacity to be able to start tracking these additional escrow accounts. But we are confident that moving forward, this is a system that would make sure that the city is recouping and recovering necessary costs, but at the same time maintains consistent and accessible to residents and the development community.
That's good. Got a whole account.
I think I answered my question.
Did you have any other, Wendy? Did you have anything else?
I'm not sure.
Well, the goal of this evening was for you all to start digesting this and for us to be able to introduce it. Again, I really want to thank Lene and her help for getting it to this point. Our plan would be, again, obviously we'll answer any other questions this evening and then bring it back at a future meeting for consideration. So if there's anything else we can do to help, you can let the city manager know, and we'd be happy to do what we can.
Sounds good. I like it. Looks good. So I think we're good.
Good.
Good. We're good. Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. All right, next, we're going to go ahead and, this was just for our discussion. It's not up for a vote tonight. So we are going to move on to our next one, which is the City Council be asked to discuss a request to amend the City of South Haven's golf cart ordinance. Where do you want to start it? Because this is,
Well,
no action has to be taken. It's more a discussion tonight. We can decide if we want to bring it back. So just,
on the golf cart discussion, the city council, we have two items that we wanted to bring up to you. We have the hours of operation, we have,
Oh, that's okay. I was waiting for you.
okay, yeah, if you want to just have a seat, I'm not sure if they're going to. The city council, city staff have received a request for the hours of operations to be reviewed. If you've seen in your packet, we've had a letter from a number of concerned citizens that wanted to see at least the hours, the dates of operation of golf carts to be moved from the current restrictions of April 15th to October 15th. In reviewing this with city attorney, there's no regulation in the statute, the Michigan statute that the city adopted, that prohibits opening up the time frame for golf cart usage, either going to April 1st or all year round. I have talked with one of the proponents of the letter and explained that the sunset provisions, or the provisions that don't allow golf carts to be driven late at night or early in the morning, because those are adopted by state statute, the city is not able to modify those particular provisions. But should the city council wish to, there is an ask to consider widening the golf cart season from beyond April 15th to October 15th. So that is the first ask. The second was we were made aware, one of our city police department officers found that there is now a golf cart hitch with additional seating and coolers that can be attached to golf carts. And also reviewing this with the city attorney, there's nothing that prohibits this in our city ordinance. So knowing that this is a potential change that could be adopted next summer, we wanted to put this policy decision in front of city council to see if there would like to be the city staff to develop an ordinance that would prevent these kind of hitches being adopted to golf carts. And I think it's all in your packet, but I think Griffin's bringing up the, can you bring up the hitch look at our photo here? But those are the two asks that we have here in front of city council tonight. And again, this is just a discussion. We're just looking for some guidance. So should you not want to modify the dates, that's fine. Or if you would like us to modify those dates, we can work on an ordinance. Additionally, we can work on a small additional ordinance if these hitched extension carts are not desired. So we're going to put that to city council.
currently they're not allowed, or we need to be clear that they're not allowed, sort of like a.
Currently, there's
Don't
nothing
go
in your
there.
ordinance that would prevent this,
Gotcha. So we'd be looking for a do not go there suggestion. So,
if that's what council would like, yes.
gotcha. I guess I would. Anyone want to jump in here? I have some thoughts, but
Just maybe a clarification, you keep referencing the state
Statute.
statute.
Mhm.
Does the state statute include turning lights, horn, and brake lights?
There are certain signal requirements that the state does require.
Yes, that it at least authorizes cities to require those by ordinance, and the city has.
Mhm.
I can pull up the language of the
I
statute
guess
now.
why can't
I
we
think it makes
change
it
the
discretion.
times and just not the dates if we're going by or by state?
Because we'd be preempted. So
Right,
if the ordinance, if the state statute says you cannot drive the golf cart a half an hour before sunset or a half an hour after sunrise, there's nothing we can draft an ordinance that wouldn't be preempted by that state law. But there's nothing in the state law that that sets the time frame or the season, if you will, of golf cart operation. So it could be year-round, it could be November to March, it could be March to November. So that's a policy decision by city council. And we've chosen maybe April 15th to October 15th, as that's a similar date that we see with uses at the marinas, at the parks. That's kind of, and as we've seen with some of our warmer weather, we're starting to see warmer days earlier in April, and as we've had this fantastic fall, many of us were wearing flip-flops over the weekend, or, in the last couple weeks of October. So I think that's one of the reasons for the request.
Exactly. Joe?
Just a couple comments. I'm fine with extending it to April 1st, October 30th. I don't see any downside. If people enjoy golf carts, which I know they do, that's fine with me. I have a real problem with this hitch extension. In college, I was fortunate enough to get a summer job driving a truck. And I can tell you, anytime you pull anything, making turns, maneuvering, it's a whole different thing. And the people that drive golf carts, a lot of them are younger people that may not be quite as careful, may not be as skillful. And I would be very concerned with pulling those around the town. I think it's just taking more of a risk for residents and other people driving, having them pull these things around. The whole idea of the golf cart is something small, maneuverable, easy to park. Seems like you've taken that away.
My two comments were, I don't have a problem with them being quite a year-round. For me, the season's irrelevant. The problems we've had have been in the summertime with the numbers. If there's one or two on the road in October or November, or it gets warm in December, for me, I don't see that as a problem. So I don't know that it has to have a year restriction. My only other comment was, I think you need to make sure to match up the ORVs and the golf carts, because they're both similar uses. And I agree, no hitches. So that would be my only, so I don't take it operate year-round, then that would take away the issue of when can they be on the road and off the road. We could focus on the hours of operation.
Oh, go ahead.
I kind of agree with what everyone has said so far. When Joe was talking about driving around with a trailer, how about backing up a trailer? So I can't imagine that's going to be a great thing to have. And I think for some of the public, this might be the first they're hearing of these hitched items, so I look forward to hearing from the public on their thoughts on this. I know Wendy and I did get one comment in opposition to the trailer thing. What was my other thought? We did get a question about, and only Officer DeBoer is here, we probably need Chief Thompson. If we add golf carts on the roads more often, are our police officers able to continue to monitor them at the summer levels? We haven't lately had summer help, but would that added burden to our police officers? That was one of the questions that Wendy and I got today about extending golf carts.
I should think that you probably are seeing less cars on the road right now as we're coming into the shoulder season. So seeing the extension of golf carts into October 31st, which is another 2 weeks past the current time limit, I don't think would have too much burden on the police department. Additionally, if this was extended to April 1st rather than April 15th, again, you're at a different time in the year. And that's 2 extra weeks for golf carts could be used if that's where council's looking at. But you're seeing different traffic volumes in those times of the year.
Yep, that's a good point. We do slow down a little.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said, so I don't care if
I
they
would
operate year-round.
agree with the mayor with the no time or the no restriction. They're available all year. For example, I use mine, still use mine today for work. So I'm in agreement to that. And also where I store my golf cart when I get it out to go up north, I have to cross the street. So I would be in favor of it year-round, but I understand the sunset and sunrise.
Yep. Do people drive them in like icy conditions? I would just worry about a potential collision with a car. No.
I've only driven at golf
Yeah,
courses.
I was gonna say,
I don't think you'll see many in the winter.
No, exactly. Exactly.
They don't have windshield wipers. I mean, they do have
Heaters.
heaters and stuff like that. So
Interesting.
it could always happen.
Yeah, we had an interesting interaction with some Ward 2 residents who I think by and large seem to be in favor of expanding the time that they're allowed, which surprised me a little bit, but that's what most of them said, I think.
So we could bring it back a few ways. I mean, and like I said, I would just say bring back golf carts and RVs together.
Okay.
We could expand the season, we could have it on the agenda.
We can definitely do that. So when we're looking at the dates of operation rather than the hours of operation, would council like to see staff prepare an amendment to the ordinance where we would either let them go year-round, or are we looking for April 1st to October 31st? What is council suggesting we can, I want to bring back what you're looking for.
I'm for a year-round.
Ditto. Thanks,
I'm kind of leaning more toward the April 1st to October 30th, but, I mean, it could go either way. I'd rather do it in kind of a gradual expansion than make it go year-round all at once, but.
I hadn't thought about year-round up until 2 minutes ago, so I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I pondered, but then I looked outside and it was 70 degrees, yesterday or whatever. I mean, I'm just saying, we see these seasons going longer, so, anyway.
Okay, we will prepare
Let's
an
bring it
ordinance,
back and we
then
could, yeah, we
kinda
could
see
just,
if-
we can have that discussion. I mean, I think expansion is a question of how far.
Could it be a possibility that commercial use, like for what my business is, could that be granted a waiver?
I'm going to defer to the attorney on that one.
The ordinance only applies to use on city streets. Do you use them on city streets in your business, or is it all internal?
About 100 foot from one location to another.
I think we could specify roads where year-round use is allowed, potentially. I think saying commercial use could get difficult, but specifying parts of the city, I think, would be doable.
Never mind then.
Got
All
some
right.
ideas?
I think we do, and we will bring back an ordinance for your contemplation on the dates of operation. As for the hitched extension carts, is there does council want to see an ordinance prohibiting this? Because right now, there's nothing that prohibits it in our current ordinance.
See, there's
I would be in
consensus to
favor of prohibit.
bring it
Okay.
in.
Then we will also work on that amendment and bring an amendment to council for these hitched extension carts.
Bring it back. All right. So you've got your guidance. Thanks for the suggestion, and we will look
We're going
at
to take
it.
any public input on this before?
I guess I will leave it up to this group.
I think
We
if you
haven't.
didn't allow it on the last one, this is.
Haven't
no
yet,
difference.
so guess what? We didn't allow in the last one, so let's go past. How's that sound?
Okay.
We've got the guidance, so the suggestion was made, and we got your comments, so thank you for your comments. We heard it. So next is the discussion, just looking again for.
Item 14.
Yeah, sorry. Discuss the potential establishment of a social district. Who's got this?
Well, thank you, Mayor. I know that Griffin has been working on this. I'm going to have him just dive in here. But this, again, is a discussion item that we're bringing to council for some guidance. So what we have here before you is the creation of a social district in downtown South Haven. This is something that we have kind of approached with a very conservative manner. We wanted to see what other communities were doing, so we took a wait-and-see approach. We've also been asked by council members to kind of look at what it's going to take with a social district. So we've put together a number of items here for your review: the proposed maintenance and management plan, the proposed social district map, as well as just some of our outreach to the Planning Commission and DDA. So with that, I'm going to have Griffin go ahead and talk us through what has been done so far and start the discussion.
Sure, thank you. Good evening again, everyone. As Kate mentioned, my understanding is this is something that the city's been contemplating for quite some time. As many of you know, the concept of social districts really came out of the COVID-19 pandemic as an additional opportunity to support your local food service, restaurants, businesses, and when this first got proposed, the city of South Haven decided to take the wait and see approach. And since then, there have been a number of surveys conducted. And after getting input from members of the public, we have also done significant research on the impacts of social districts, or I guess I should say lack thereof, in other communities. Included in the support materials, you can see an MLCC social district list. There's approximately 80 social districts established in the state of Michigan, and a lot of the concerns that were brought up and expressed originally regarding social districts, things about additional noise and garbage and crime and other similar concerns, really haven't played out in practice in these other communities. With that being said, we were comfortable taking next steps and preparing the actual management and maintenance plan, draft maps and materials that would be needed should City Council decide to move forward and attempt to implement something like this. So earlier this year, a letter was shared to all property within the proposed social district as well as 300 feet around, and it was vetted by the DDA and the Planning Commission. And now it is brought before all of you for review and for feedback, and ultimately city staff will be looking for some direction from City Council on whether or not you would like to move forward with a South Haven social district. I'm happy to walk you all through some of the details of the management and maintenance plan, but I think for now I'll just stop there and take some direction from council.
Can you share the map, Griffin? And so this is the proposed map. It shows the areas where the social district would occur within those borders, but we're really looking at public property. Private property is not included in this. It's in the district because you have to draw a boundary line, but we're not saying go ahead and start a,
Tailgate party.
a tailgate, thank you, in someone's parking lot or next to their building. This is really highlighting the common areas, which are going to be the sidewalks and potentially streets if there was a festival or something. So this is really those sidewalk areas in the downtown where a person could, if this was approved, go to a participating restaurant or bar, get a beverage, and be on those common areas, the sidewalks, and be in that district.
I think to be very consistent with the direction the city's taken on this topic for almost 2 years at this point. The proposed plan, time of year, area is relatively limited in scope. All of that was done very intentionally with the idea of let's start small, let's start manageable, and if it works, if there's no issues, if this is something people like, if this is something City Council wants to continue, it can always be expanded from there. But I think the easiest way to explain it is the mindset is let's start small and manageable instead of too large, too big, too quick, and we can always adapt from there. But again, that's just the direction that's being proposed at this time. Again, ultimately, it's the decision of the City Council, and looking forward to your input.
And you say start small, so we could also walk it back if we don't like it.
Correct.
Yeah.
It could also always be ended or reduced or changed as well. I think we don't have a lot of concerns about what is being proposed getting out of control per se. Again, really consistent with all the other communities we've talked to about this process. A lot of those concerns that were wisely brought up originally, a lot of them didn't play out in practice. So at this point, it's something that we're comfortable bringing before you all.
Okay. And this is just for discuss. We're not no action tonight. Just really looking to see, do we want to see this come back?
Correct. What would be helpful for staff at this point is, I guess, some guidance from council on, is this something you all are interested in? Is this something you all would like to see move forward? If so, the resolution formally designating the social district could be brought back at a future meeting, and city staff could begin that process. But obviously, we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves if this isn't something that you all even want to see.
Also, there's been a lot of work put into the management plan as well as the map, and if there's any concerns with either one of those, we'd like to hear any concerns, or we have had comments given in Planning Commission DDA, and we've tried to address them, but just also looking to see what City Council is thinking about the proposed area and the management plan.
With that being said, the minutes from the DDA meeting and the Planning Commission meeting when these plans were vetted are linked here, as well as the correspondence that have been submitted to date. We're excited that most of the feedback that was submitted has been able to be incorporated into this updated map.
And again, proposal would be off-season only. It's a relatively confined district.
At this time, yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't have any desire for summer months, but
And
thoughts?
For anyone that doesn't have a packet in front of them or listeners at home, we're talking about 7 days a week from noon to 8 p.m., beginning October 1st until May 15th.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the plan would be to begin that fall 2023. That would allow staff the time to not only go through the approval process with the Michigan Liquor Control Commission for the South Haven Social District. It would give local businesses interested in participating time to go through the local and the state approval processes, as well as for staff to work with the appropriate boards and commissions to put the applicable signs up and make sure that when or if this is to start, it can be done in a high-quality manner and not kind of haphazardly.
I guess one of my concerns is that the only public area is the sidewalk, which already is a little bit tight of a squeeze on weekends and whatnot when people are walking through. When you look at somewhere like Fenville, where I've spent a lot of time working, they incorporated their park so they can enjoy a beverage while they're listening to a concert or just sitting and having a picnic. That kind of makes more sense to me for the spirit of a social district if we needed one versus just kind of walking around downtown with a drink in your hand.
That can definitely be considered. I can speak to why this was developed the way it was at this point in time. Again, being consistent with the city's kind of relatively conservative and wait and see approach on this. Parks like Dykeman Park weren't included at this point in time because the public parks presently have park rules in place that prohibit alcohol, and we decided not to go through the additional step without direction from City Council of amending or changing those rules. But those are definitely steps that could be taken at some point in time should the City Council want to see this proposed district expanded to areas like that.
Go ahead, Joe.
My question is, have we talked to any of the city managers or city mayors and seen if, in fact, where they have it, is it a problem? I took it upon myself last summer, just for the heck of it, to talk to a police officer in Kalamazoo, which has a social district. And I asked him if there's any problems with it. He said none that he knows of. Second part of it is my worry, and we have an officer, I'd love to hear his opinion, but how do we enforce this? And do you think there's going to be an enforcement issue even? So is there going to be an enforcement issue? And if so, how do we ask our police officers, which have a lot to do right now to start worrying about people having the appropriate cup, appropriate signage, appropriate this and that to manage this? Or is that not going to be a problem?
I think that there's a reason why we chose the off-season and the shoulder seasons, because we have heard from the police department just concerned that we have such an influx in the summertime. The preference is to look at this right now for the off-season in the wintertime because we have more resources in that. I've spoken to John Hodgson, who's the city manager of City of St. Joseph, and they've been quite pleased with the social district. In fact, they've added a second one because they've enjoyed it that much. I think that this is a manageable ask of the police department. We're in the off-season where we have more time as you look out out this front door here at City Hall. It's a calmer night. We're not seeing as much as the foot traffic as we would in the downtown during the summer. So I think this is trying to balance that with what we understand our resources are.
This plan has been vetted by Chief Thompson, and yes, we've spoken. It has been vetted by Chief Thompson, and yes, we've spoken to several communities, and as we've shared, they've been very consistent that the concerns that were originally raised about the implementation of social districts have not been seen in practice.
Thank you.
What do you mean by you say it was vetted by Chief Thompson? What does that mean?
She didn't have any concerns with
this-
what was being promoted or being asked of. I think she did say that there was concerns about this, being a social district in the downtown during the summer months, simply because of the amount of people we have and that we have so many visitors in town. I think that there is, this is one more thing that police officers can do, but we also know that we have not as many folks in town in the shoulder season than in the off-season, and this wasn't really a concern, which the dates that were being talked about in this plan.
The one thought off the top of my head, with the 8 PM curfew, the chamber has that nice New Year's Eve festival that would be excluded.
Yes, and I think that we can look at special events potentially, because they have to have, through liquor control, those are dealt differently under a social district. But probably because it's now dark at 5:30, you probably don't want too many people out from 5:36 to midnight.
Like with anything, this would be a learning experience. I think that's part of the idea of proposing a relatively limited scope up front is we can learn from this, we can see how it goes, and take input and adjust moving forward as necessary.
Yeah. So I've taken a few phone calls, like from places that were a little outside the district, and trying to explain to them the goal was contiguous, relatively compact to start, and obviously I don't see it expanding.
But to Councilman Slack's question earlier, city staff and the team who worked on putting together this plan very intentionally worked with the police department to make sure this was something that they were comfortable with. As many of you likely remember, when this was originally brought to various boards and commissions, and I believe to council almost 2 years ago, a lot of the concerns raised at that time were regarding law enforcement and the enforcement. So we definitely wanted to make sure that the plan being proposed was something that the police department was comfy with. My understanding is they're very comfortable with what's being proposed at this time, and if there were expansions going to be explored moving forward, we would continue to work with them to make sure that they're involved in that process.
So I guess for the purpose of tonight, is there, any other issues you want staff to consider? You want it to come back at a future time?
I saw this at Planning Commission, and everything that I saw that was a concern got incorporated already, so I'm good.
So possibly.
I just have a little question mark about the noon start and how that will impact kind of the feeling downtown for people with kids and all of that. But I don't know that can be necessarily answered more of if this happened, kind of seeing how it goes.
I think that
changing if
seeing how
needed.
it goes, and if council has concerns, we can put a sunset clause in the ordinance, the adoption of it, and that we can review it after the first year and see how we'd like to proceed.
This is not an ordinance, right? This would be a
I'm sorry,
resolution.
it'll be a resolution, but we can have a sunset provision where we have to revisit it and then re-adopt it or not.
So there's at least enough to maybe do some homework, and we'll come back and visit it another time. That sounds, any other guidance you need from us?
So is there consensus that this is something you all want brought back for consideration? Are we not there yet? What would you all like to see next?
I saw a consensus to bring it back, so at least bring it back, and then at that time, we'll have
Then we can get
an
public
official
comment.
public meeting and discuss it
Okay.
at
Thank you.
length. So, all right, that'll roll us on to Mr. Bill Hunter. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening, Your Honor, City Council. I'm going to give you an update what's going on in DPW project-wise. New substation is underway. Contractor is mobilized, so they started to work on that. We have, with the City Council's approval tonight, there will be no further purchases in front of City Council. I know there was a lot going on, but what we tried to do is we really broke this down and even bidding out even a lot of smaller stuff to try to save as much money as we can. And that was just due to all the price increases. So we individually, we usually go with like one big mass for all of our material. And we actually squeezed it and separated it out. And I believe we actually got a pretty good bang for our buck, so to speak. So, but it is underway right now, and we should have that energized actually in this spring of next year. So that's with, cross your fingers with the conjunction with AEP as well, because they have a line going through and there's a lot of moving parts, but that's our goal. AMI project, that we're still expecting that we're getting a lot of the meters in, and it looks like we are on schedule to be ramping up in the spring and getting those meters changed out. So then we'll be full AMI, so we won't have everything will just come into City Council, I'm sorry, it's to billing. So for example, if somebody has a final read, you just look up on the computer and there's the read. We can also do remote shutoffs during that time. So if for billing periods, we don't have to send people out, we'll be able to shut them off from a desktop. What also that will do is change actually, for example, our fees for that. We can't actually charge for a shutoff because our shutoffs are based on recovering our costs. So if our costs are based on somebody shutting something off from a computer, we're going to have to adjust that. And that'll be brought in front of City Council at a later date. But those are some of the things you'll see with the improvement. It's going to allow us in the future to start looking at time of day rates, which will be so important to us in the future to decrease our load and maybe incentivize so we're not purchasing as much power in the peak times. Aylworth non-motorized path, we did have that bid out originally. This is going through MDOT, and we had one bidder, and of course it was too high, so we asked MDOT to rebid it again, and we got lower prices. So it's a good thing. So it's always good when you have multiple bidders, because the last time we had one bidder. So I did envision probably that person probably knew of the company that they might have been the low bidder or the only bidder, so.
I wanted to tell you, just go hit up those guys that were doing all the concrete work at the high school. Just keep going.
Just keep going.
Jeez.
But we do anticipate actually to be starting that in the fall of this year. The air handling units, we're still waiting on those. The contractor we have, they'll be putting in, City Council won't see this, but there'll be a hatch on the top of the roof here. It'll allow us actually to bring in the new units, disassemble the old ones and bring the new ones in. Kids Corner Phase 2, that'll be in front of the Parks Commission meeting tomorrow. The Parks Commission meeting will be at the DPW building just due to what's going on at City Hall tomorrow. It's election day, so there'll be a lot of people here. So we'll have it over at the DPW building, which is 1199 8th Avenue.
If I'm late, it's because I forgot and I came here. So you know, I could.
On the agenda is a review of the bids, and we'll be asking the Parks Commission to, we have pros and cons for each one of the bids, and having the Parks Commission make a recommendation on the contractor or the designer, because it's a design construct, so we'll be the design construct company and be moving forward with that. On the agenda as well will be the master plan, just an updated process, where are we at right now in regards to the public input on that. The pier and railing gates, we're still waiting on Army Corps of Engineers. There's two, I did get emails from them this time, so that's a progress, I'll tell you.
Good job.
I got a name now and I got a number, so I can get a hold of somebody now. Leaf pickup, we're running that through December 9th. We have 2 trucks out. 2 trucks that are running 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. They start, and when they're done, they start back over. That's all they're doing. We do have some phone calls come in. We do appreciate that, or understand that there's a lot of leaves that fell with these winds. Everything came right now, but there's a lot of leaves everywhere. So those trucks, they only have a certain capacity, and then they have to leave, go dump, and then come back. So doing the best we can. We only really have 2 trucks. But it's 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. So, street resurfacing, those projects are complete. We call it the spring resurfacing, is the one that we delayed, and we just finished it this fall. What we're actually waiting on now is pavement markings, signage, and I think that's it. We're still doing the designs actually for the resurfacing for the spring of 2023. We should have those out for bid soon for the winter, and then we'll be completing those in the spring of next year, 2023. Covert Township flushing rates, I've had this on the update for quite some time. We've had constant, with these flushers they have, there's these quasi MacGyvered flushers. I took a look at them. I said, we're spending way too much. Why I have this on here is because I'm trying to get to where I have a consistent flows where I can set up a meeting with Covert and say, here are the flows, here's the rates we need to charge. I can't get consistency because about every month one of them fails, so we're going to put new ones in. I appreciate what we were trying to do to save money, but in that essence of saving money, we just really have, it's cost us more money over time, so we'll be replacing them. The water service replacements, we've had extended the contract with Compton's Incorporated. They're going through and potholing the area. We had an area started, and through the inspections, we're discovering actually that as what we had listed as lead was not lead. So we're finding actually most of our that are designated lead are actually only about 22% of them are lead. So we keep extending it out at actually no cost. So the area what we're doing is we're getting our inventory better, plus we're eliminating, so our end report to Eagle will show actually we have eliminated more than what our goal was. But really all we're doing is finding that they weren't lead. We have been notified that through SHASA that we are receiving actually through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, $7.28 million for improvements at the wastewater treatment plant, which will include UV system installation, biological treatment improvements, secondary clarifier and flood improvements. With that is a loan forgiveness of $3.64 million. That means we're getting $7.28 million of a project for $3.64. It's a good thing, so 50%. That's actually the $7.28 million. We did have a master plan that was completed just early this year. We had about $15 million worth of improvements there. So we're about halfway there. So the goal is to, when this gets done, to reapply. And if we can get it done again for another 50 cents on the dollar, then I think that's money well spent, and it helps us out. End goal is actually on our rates.
Keeps those rates down.
And last but not least, actually, we have completed actually our lead surface sampling within the SHASA and Covert system. Out of all 40 samples, all of them came back non-detect. That means we're not detecting any lead. So that's a good thing. So we're meeting actually our requirements with the Safe Water Drinking Act. The City Council have any questions on any of these projects?
Questions, anybody?
I was just wondering, I think I know the answer, but I could be wrong. Do you still compost the leaves that you pick up?
We actually do have a site, yes. We pick them up and bring them to a site, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I would just say, once again, we had a lot of wind the last several days, and thank you very much to your crews. My power didn't go out despite a line being down across the road. I went for a walk, and there
Yes.
they were. So, yeah, line down, and your crew took care of it on a horrific wind day. So I would, again, thank them for keeping my lights on every single storm. Did you say those sidewalks might start this fall? Is that a room? I just. Maybe you're in the
It should be the
spring.
spring. No, it should be it'd be the spring of next year. Because if they're going to be awarding it, I don't know, it's possible, actually, we could start the groundwork and stuff, preparing it, but in all likelihood, probably it'll be the spring.
Be nice to get that started, so
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it. I think I've showed you the picture before, but there was another nice picture in the Kalamazoo Gazette of like on the bike paths, like doing some green, like actually making that lane green, so it's visually, like, you could kind of figure it out if you're in a car, oh, that's a green bike lane, and I have a picture, but I mean, I don't know who's responsible for green paint, maybe the same.
We'd have to go by MDOT specs, so I'd have to see if it's even allowed with the manual for uniform traffic code and devices.
Just another way to help the eyeballs figure out what's going on, so.
Mhm.
So no, that's all. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All righty, thank you. All right, so now, so we had a couple items earlier that we didn't take action on, so if you want to comment on them now, I know we had the social district and also the golf cart, so feel free, we didn't action them, so if you want to comment on those or any other items you'd like to discuss that were not on the agenda, come on up, state your name and your address, and you have up to 5 minutes to address the council.
Dan Agnello, 964 Everett Parkway. The social district, I'm in favor of that. I've been to a couple of them, Northville, but I'm surprised that the time is only from like noon to 8. I think the time, the people don't go drink until after 9, 10 o'clock. I don't bar hop, but I know people that do. And in the wintertime, I understand we're trying to get used to it, see what happens, but in the winter, we have 2 festivals, Icebreaker and New Year's. And people are walking around town, with alcohol. It's just a given. Now, there's one person that owned a business in town, and they said, well, you might as well have a social district because people are walking around with their own wine and beer and mixed drinks, and we're not making any money on it. So, I've seen it all the time. My wife and I are sitting on the river, and like these 10 ladies came by, maybe from a bachelorette party or something, and they didn't have coffee in those mugs, okay? So, I'm in favor, but I don't know how it's going to be policed, but it is what it is, I guess. One thing I wanted to tell Bill is thanks for doing the sidewalks on Elkenberg. It's not much in front of my house, on St. Joe, not in front of my house, but when they built those 4 houses, they tore up probably 15, 20 sidewalks. Initially, Bill said, well, the residents have to pay for it, but then he talked to the builder, a developer, and they're going to end up paying for it. So, and they got them also all done, except for one that's on the end that has one of those grid things on it. So that has to be done. The STR ordinance, again, we keep going on this thing. We've created a monster, and it's almost impossible, especially for personal STRs, to enforce. Give an example. Next to me, I didn't realize it was a personal STR until I called last summer. And Kelly T told me that it was a personal STR, and I said, okay, and because I called her about all the noise that people were partying till 3 o'clock in the morning, and she told me that, okay? And so in October, I called her and said, man, I think they've had more than 6 rentals. And she couldn't find out because you really can't tell from the schedules, whatever, because they could block it out for their family. And what they do is, I'm going to say Shores is the one, the past months, they completely show that all the past months were rented, so you can't tell what was going on. So, so what happened is Kelly T issues them a warning letter or email. Now, I've said this a million times. The ordinance does not say warning. If you punish these guys, they won't play the system, because the more they rent, the more money they make, the agencies, and the more money the people make. So, especially for personal STRs, it really is a problem. Okay. Okay, we're talking about the ZBA too. There's a lot of houses that are non-conforming, and Elaine sent an email about that. And for some reason, we went from 100 to 400 STRs that went from not exempt to exempt. And I think what happened was they finally looked at the ordinances, looked at the parking requirements, and they said, hey, you don't meet our zoning ordinances, so therefore you don't get a license. And they probably threatened whoever was doing it at the time to say, hey, you're going to give us a license, or we're going to put some pressure on you, whatever it is, to do that. So This has to be done. I know Elaine has got some things going on with the ZBA and stuff like that. And then the one item I wanted to say was on, I've sent you guys all seen this email a couple weeks ago, you know, the fact that we cannot appeal a waiver done for a PUD. Okay, we can't go to the ZBA. We can hire a lawyer, spend $10,000 to $15,000, but per city ordinance, thank you, per city ordinance, we cannot go to the ZBA, pay our $500, whatever it is, and some possible escrow fee, which is, to me, is way out of line. So I talked to Kelly, does that, and she said it was a state, it's consistent with the State Enabling Act. Well, the State Enabling Act says the city can determine it in their own ordinances. So we could change that ordinance. So, you know, there's no way that, I can't believe this, but there's no way that you can discuss this with them or try to get it changed, the ZBA. And I think that's wrong, okay? And I'll give you the last term is like John Adams. You know, you get up here and you say something and say, they don't listen to us, okay? Well, John Adams went through the same thing. He's trying to write get the Declaration of Independence done, okay? And he pushed Jefferson, said, you write it. And he said, no, I can't. I'm going back home. My wife's having a kid. He wrote the thing anyway. And John Adams twisted arms to get it passed. And he says, you know, is anybody there? Does anybody care? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Maureen Hillary. I live at 221 Clinton Street. And I just wanted to make a comment. I've talked with you on the phone. And I wanted to make a comment on the golf cart. I'm the one that got all the people to sign. We were trying to get something, but now the weather is nice. You know, I think, time-wise, I want to amend our paper that we sent off to everybody. I think if you're concerned about somebody taking a golf cart out when there's snow on the ground, then just make it December, January, and February that they're not supposed to be. Otherwise, leave it up to people. I'm not going to bring my golf cart out even if it's raining. And I'm certainly not going to bring it out if there's snow on the ground and I might slide and I've got nobody to push my golf cart back home for me. I wanted to say that those of us who are getting older, I just love to take my golf cart down to the post office, to get my coffee at Julia's, to go to the library and get a book, and I don't have to back the car out. I mean, it's just so handy, and it's handy whether it's beautiful weather in March or in November, and all summer long. And I use it all the time. It saves on pollution, certainly better than a motorcycle. And who regulates bicycles in the winter? Who, you know, if you want to take your bicycle out, take a chance on killing yourself. You know, nobody regulates that. So I just wanted to say we want to change our asking for April 15, you know, all of April and all of October to make it flexible and leave it up to the people. I don't think you're going to run into a problem. There's hardly anybody here. There were about 5 cars that went down my street tonight when I was watching the news, and usually there's many. So a golf cart in that mix wouldn't have made a bit of a difference. So thank you.
Thanks for your work and gathering those signatures. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, folks. I'm Emily Hickmott. I work for the Van Buren Conservation District. I just wanted to revisit you all. I was here back in July and had some updates from the district and thought I'd give you an idea of what we've been doing the last several months. So when I was here last, I talked about the upcoming Recycle Roundup event that we host here on behalf of the city. And it's open to the whole county, but you all partner with us so well and help us out a lot by allowing us to use your DPW center. It's a great site that allows for a lot of traffic. It's always very smooth. We saw an increase in participation all around by 40%, which was exciting. And then from city residents alone, we saw an increase of 79% participation. So that was very exciting. So we appreciate you all and those in the community helping us get the word out. With that, we are planning for next year year already, so we nearly have our dates set, and we will be sending out the tax bill inserts again. Already connected with the city staff on that, so we're looking forward to getting those dates in folks' hands so they can prepare for next summer. And additionally, since we try not to get out, especially this far in the winter months, I have brought some of these. So we just designed a door hanger. It's got a blank space and just basically says, we invite you to our next collection. So our idea initially was that if folks are having enforcement issues, or maybe you're having blight or anything like that, or just people don't know, this would be available for any staff that might be working on that and can provide these to residents. You can print labels off and put different dates for collections on it, or just write the one that you know is coming up next, whatever works best for you all. And if those don't work, we're open to other ideas you might have. Additionally, we were here in September to help with the Friends of the Calhaven Trail. We worked on cleaning up the trailhead, did a few miles into that, and got some trash picked up, which was a really great opportunity. And we are also going to be selling dune grass, which is new for us. So during our tree and shrub seedling sale that we do in April, we will also have native Michigan dune grass available. So if there are any city properties or any of the public that are interested in buying that to put along their dune side, we'd be happy to help them out. Other than that, we're always available for questions. It's basically grant reporting and writing season for us, so we are in the office, out of the field for the most part, and happy to take questions or help out with anything that you or your residents need.
So the same as before. Get with Kate and you come at the first part of the meeting and not have to sit 2.5 hours.
I know, I appreciate it, but it is always nice to know what's going on in your community and find out how we
Just
might be
in
able to help.
case.
So.
You have grants to write, so just in case. I'm just
Sounds
making
good.
that.
Thank you so much.
Just soften it up if you ever want to. So we appreciate the information. Anybody have any questions? Nothing? No. Good evening, Cam.
Hey, Cam Doherty, live in Ward 2, 522 Edgell Street. No surprise, I'm here to speak about beach safety. But I did just want to take a minute to recognize what a blessing it is to have so many engaged members of our community, so dedicated to making sure we get things right. All the comments tonight, I thought, whether you agreed with them or disagreed with them, I thought it was really nice to see everybody participating. As you are all aware, I was a member of the South Haven Beach Safety Committee, which ran from the end of 2020 through the end of Q1 2021. While I took issue with some of the way the meetings went, I was happy to be a part of the committee overall. It gave a voice to those who were concerned about beach and pier safety in South Haven. So overall, good experience. During the course of the committee meetings, another member, former South Haven Lifeguard Program Director Sean Russell, and I provided a proposal for a reimagined South Haven Lifeguard Program. Given that our stretch of shoreline has become widely recognized as the most dangerous along Michigan coast of Lake Michigan, and because a certified and trained lifeguard program is proven not just globally but directly in South Haven to be the most effective way to prevent open water drowning deaths, I'd like to take a minute to share that proposal with you all again and with the community as a whole. Sean and I started with the previous proven effective South Haven Lifeguard Program model and right-sized it for today's needs and market conditions. Our proposal recommended 13 full-time seasonal lifeguards, 2 part-time lifeguards, 2 head lifeguards, and 1 program director to cover 7 towers between North and South Beach. The recommended staff equipment included 3 swimsuits, 3 shirts, and 1 jacket, and a whistle and rescue can for each guard. We've also accounted for first aid kits and some additional supplies, 2 rescue boards, and the 7 towers. The total first-year expense of this program at the newly adjusted salary levels would be $228,000 a year, with an ongoing annual expense to run the program of $197,000. Lifeguards offer an affordable, multifaceted impact to a comprehensive beach and pier safety program. Through the addition of lifeguards, the following ongoing safety concerns would be addressed: public education, active prevention, real-time conditions assessment, pier closure support, and lifeguards act as a force multiplier for local emergency service departments, specifically in regards to open container, smoking, dogs on the beach, aggressive behavior, and notification to the police department on all those matters. And lifeguards run point on lost and missing persons along the beach and piers and administer first aid to beachgoers. In all honesty, because of everything I just mentioned, swimmer rescue ends up being a very, very small part of what a guard does during the season. And in fact, most guards end their career with few to no rescues because they're not needed. Additionally, it is worth noting that a strong lifeguard program acts as a feeder program for other emergency service teams. Every former lifeguard that I know from South Haven and surrounding communities has gone on to careers that serve their communities. Since the cessation of the South Haven Lifeguard Program in 1991, 12 souls have passed in South Haven due to drowning deaths, with 7 just between 2020 and 2022. In the fall of 2019, after the tragic drowning death of 13-year-old Theron Booker Nolan of Ann Arbor, I addressed council and city staff with valuable insights, resources, and proposed solutions on how we could actively work to minimize any future loss of life. At that time, I was clear that if we didn't take meaningful action, more lives would be lost. And very sadly, I wasn't wrong. You represent a frustrated and grieving community. It is incumbent upon us all to stop talking and start taking action as you all were elected to do. A path has been laid out, and a common sense decision to bring lifeguards back to South Haven is warranted. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Cam, appreciate it.
I want to piggyback on what Cam just said. Not sure what the reasoning was, but the beach safety review did not take place in October, like Kate said it would. So since it's November now, and there's one more city council meeting, I want to have confirmation that the beach safety review will be taking place at the next city council meeting.
Oh, it will. We actually just had a beach safety summit, and because we had that summit, I had to push my review back a month. So it will be coming back on the 21st.
Great, okay. So to get the conversation started, looking at the facts, the drownings this summer occurred under yellow flag designation near the piers during conditions when the waves were hitting the pier sideways. Maybe under these conditions, the flag designation should be read. Yellow flag designation is confusing, and we also need to start having more education. There are many consultants. Cam discussed some of the ideas. Great Lakes Surf Rescue Project does a lot of services and provides videos on beach safety. There could be beach safety postings on the city website continually being updated, running videos on, for instance, how to wear a life jacket, what type of life jackets are for certain age groups, how do you fit into them, how are they used in a lake setting if there is a problem. We should start a program in our schools. I think something that could be done would be having part of water safety in our schools so that children know how to deal in all different types of situations on the beach, along with first aid up to CPR and other things that could be needed. A lot of schools do have beach safety requirements, and since we are a lake community, I think this would be something we could do. Having lifeguards. You can't get anything better than eyes on the ground. And if we have a lifeguard on the beach, they are there watching and seeing and can get to a person in need a lot quicker than having to call emergency services to get there. I have been in contact with some of the more recent drowning victims' parents, and their grief is sometimes hard even to listen to. I hope that our city will listen and work together with citizens, victims, and come up with a plan, review the plan, and most importantly, get lifeguards back on our beaches. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Going once?
Mary Hasley, 726 North Shore Drive. I'm going to talk about the escrow. So the beginning of that memo talks about charging reasonable fees under the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. And the memo continues, and it says those fees are not just the basic fees, but also the escrow fees. And that is in where the problem lies. There is nothing reasonable that has occurred with regard to escrow fees before the ZBA this year. In August, there was an agenda item for 218 Huron Street, a measly $300 application fee for an interpretation and dimension variance. That case was back before the ZBA for a second hearing on the same thing in September. During that same meeting, there was an administrative appeal for 240 Oak. From a FOIA, I learned that yes, just the $30 basic filing fee for 28 Huron. Nothing else, no escrow, nothing. But there are entries from Mr. Curcio that he worked on 2018 Huron. I know from talking with applicants for the 240 Oak, they paid $300 basic fee, $1,500 escrow fee, $1,000 in excess of the $500 allowed. So in the agenda today, it mentions escrow fee policy, but we heard her mention today that there is no escrow fee policy. And in fact, if you look at the website, it says under the exact same thing, $500 up to. That's the max, not 15, 500. What has not been provided today is in the memo, the agenda packet, talked about fees from other jurisdictions. We heard everything's reasonable. Show me the money. Show me the figures. Will the next agenda packet have those for comparison? The citizens deserve to see the same comparison. How does the city show that the $1,500 is reasonable? Just because another court allowed $1,500 on a resolution for a specific item does not mean a carte blanche $1,500 fee is reasonable. I know other jurisdictions is much lower. I've seen it. How does the city, and this goes exactly to the abuse that is happening and discrimination against preventing people coming to the ZBA to challenge bad decisions of the staff who get to set the escrow fee. This is the fox in charge of the hen house. Questions for elected officials. Why were these not first presented to the Planning Commission? How does this advance the proposed vision statement to unite us? This divides us further. When is the city going to start embracing voters and holding staff accountable for the discriminatory application of escrow fees, which are prohibitory? Sorry, I had to split up. The city is encouraged to immediately reimburse the 240 Oak people $1,000 that was charged in excess of the $500 maximum allowed for escrow for additional fees such as attorney fees. Those attorney fees from Mr. Curcio should have been in this October consent agenda. And why is it taking staff so long to provide an accounting? Is it because they don't want to? Is it because Mr. Curcio's fees are not delineated enough, itemized enough? He bundles them, so you don't know how much time was spent on 218, 240, ZBA, STR caps. It's all a mishmash. So I also asked the City Council to instruct that pending ZBA applications for at least an interpretation that are being held hostage with the unauthorized $1,500 escrow fee be sent to ZBA post haste upon escrow fee adjustment and payment of any escrow fee that does not exceed $500, which is the only fee allowed. I also asked City Council to advise city staff that it is not right to schedule any meetings at the same time as the City Council to avoid at all costs. Last month, the ZBA has rescheduled its December meeting to directly conflict with the December meeting of the City Council. The ZBA had to move the meeting, I understand that, but it did not have to move it to a Monday. You had to move it. You could move it to a day such that a person can go to ZBA and a person can go to City Council. The matters before both of these bodies are important. Individuals should have the right to attend both of them. They should not be held at the same time. It's time for the city to address residents' concern in a timely manner. The discriminatory application of escrow fees show how unfairly discretion is exercised by the staff.
Thanks, Mary. Appreciate it. Was there anybody else?
Good evening. I'm Mary Pat Carollo. My husband, Tony Carollo, of 242. Yes, go ahead. We're here to discuss the recent cost of our ZBA appeal regarding the construction of a non-conforming outdoor kitchen at 242. We had to pay the $300 fee, $1,500 escrow, and we felt we needed also a private attorney, which was our responsibility for additional fees. From what was stated tonight and from what we understand, a previous ZBA appeal the same night only cost them $300. It is our understanding that this applicant actually had two hearings, one at the previous ZBA meeting and at ours, at the cost of $300. That is what we understand. Our concern tonight was when we got notice that fees were going to even be escalating more into the $500 range and into the $1,500 for escrow plus additional $500 every time it went down lower, making it more difficult for anyone to make a ZBA appeal. Our ZBA appeal was successful. We have requested an accounting from the city of how our funds were used and what will be done to enforce the appeal. And so far, we don't know. And that's why we're here tonight, just to make you aware of where we are in this situation.
I guess one thing I would like to state, the consultant that was here said nothing about attorney's fees and what these additional costs should be. The attorney is here for a reason. He's here to assist with your decision-making, but it has nothing to do with our decision-making. That's why we had to hire our own attorney. We shouldn't have to pay your attorney also. But the fact that she didn't mention attorney's fees either would make me think that that isn't appropriate. So, thank you.
And in our original ZBA request, it was not for a zoning variance. So there was an additional information that had to be provided that there wasn't even a form for that we had to develop, and that was one of the reasons we thought we needed to have our own attorney. So I appreciate your time tonight.
Okay, thank you. And then, Kate, you can follow up.
Yes, we've
with
already
them and
processed
CC.
a reimbursement, and we have already got the accounting, so that's being sent out to the Carollos. They are getting a refund of, I think, over $300.
Maybe just include to us later. We just
I'm sorry?
I said just as long as you communicate through to them.
Yep,
we'll
we will
CC
communicate that, and I'm happy to share that with council. The city attorney did do quite a bit of work on that particular case, and that's what was deducted.
Okay. All right. Was there anybody else?
Hi, I'm Benita Davido. I'm at 1053 Monroe Boulevard, South Haven. And I wanted to just say a couple things about, well, let me just go. One of the items that I'm concerned about is the path on Aylesworth and Elkinburg, the bike path. When you go down Aylesworth, the foliage there by the bike path is so bad you can't see. And a lot of times the bikes just roll out and it's very dangerous for the drivers. I've almost hit a couple of people at that location. I called up the DNR because I was told that they're responsible for that, but nothing has gotten done with that foliage that blocks the view of anybody that's riding their bike down. That would be the north side of where the fence is. So that's one of the concerns. Another concern that I have is today, well, actually, I'm in leaf hell. But today, the guys came by and picked up the leaves. But they hadn't been to my location since it's been 11 days. And all that wind blew most of those leaves back into my yard that I pay somebody to rake my yard. And I don't know, they went on the other side of the street like 2 times, but they never came on my side. And I'm just disgusted with the poor service that I particularly have received in my section of town. And I don't know what's going on with that. So I just, thought I would let you know that you just drive by my house. Thank you.
And I will say, I mean, I
You
watched.
saw, if you drive
I
right
watched
by my
them,
house.
and I had the same situation where I was, whatever day it was, we had the terrible windstorm, because I had some piled up there, and I was like, and I saw them coming down, and then they were done, until then, like, today. But
They
in the
got done
meantime, all my
today.
leaves probably blew to your yard, so.
They do. Well, Cass it's a tunnel that goes right to my house. So whatever's on the street goes right back into my yard.
Yeah.
And I can't afford to be I pay somebody 2 or 3 times a season, but when they're not picked up, it just needs to be done more often on certain areas of the city. Because where I'm at, not all the leaves are down. They're not going to get down till around Christmas.
And they'll keep coming. I mean, you just heard Bill say they're
But I
60
look
hours a
around,
week.
some of the trees don't have anything on it, but around me they do. So
They're still coming. They'll keep coming.
I know, but I need that truck to come by. So,
Thanks for your reminder on that. We'll work on getting that brush cut, because we've done that before.
That's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jack Fitzer, 24 and a half Grand Boulevard.
Good evening.
I'm a little bit confused. I'm hoping maybe one of you can help me, because I followed Tony's efforts here in this manner. You have a zoning laws that you approved and are supposed to be for the benefit of the citizens in town. Rather than charging Tony $1,500, you should be thanking him and returning every penny of it, because he found an infraction that your folks, we talked about errors earlier, wouldn't see, whatever it could be, it happened. Now, Tony is put in a position where he's paying a large amount of money, and rather than paying that, you should be thanking him for finding this discrepancy, this error in whatever was occurring. This is not the first time that I've seen it in town here. I've been around a long time. And on each of these occasions, the one thing that occurs is that those neighbors become enemies for life. And part of that is because the city didn't take the proper steps to make certain that the zoning law was followed. In this case, Tony took the step. He's the hero here. He's the guy. He's the one that went to the police, metaphorically. But he's the one you should be thanking, and he shouldn't be paying anything for any of this. Another subject, all right? I mean, another subject entirely. I'm here, and I've sat through 2.5 hours. I thank you guys for all you do. And Kate knows that usually at the end of the season, if I'm here for some reason, I talk about boating and how wonderful it is and how much we have to offer. Well, I'm going to tell you, this season, out of my 30-some seasons in South Haven, is one of the least enjoyable. And the reason for that is there's just been mismanagement on a number of levels. And that mismanagement goes for everywhere from the management of the pump-out stations to the landscaping. What once was the jewel of South Haven, the beautiful, magnificent landscaping that brought people back here time and time again, it turns into a pile of rocks. You know, I mean, that's what we saw was rocks being delivered in place of landscaping. Where I'm located over on the Maritime Museum, it's been just a continuing put off. Okay, we're going to put that off. We're going to put it off, and now, really, it's becoming difficult. All you have to do is walk the docks, and you see the nail holes. You see the things that are falling apart. And I think some concern has to be. I understand the money. I understand the COVID. I understand all that stuff. But there's some attention that has to be looked at that. But overall, it was not one of the better seasons in South Haven Marina's history. And I'm sorry to have to say that. But Tony is the hero of the year, and I hope you guys recognize that. More people should stand up to protect their properties and to go out of their way to enforce the rules that you have set. Thank you.
Thanks, appreciate it. That's a good point. Was there anybody else? And if not, let's go to Kate's comments.
I've got a few comments. The first one is yard waste bins. Many people have that 96-gallon yard waste bin. Those will not be picked up this year. They have been dropped off, so we'll just have to store them. The last day that yard waste will be picked up in those bins is November 30th. After that, just go ahead and store that away, and those pickups for yard waste will resume in April. Leaf pickup has been talked about before. We have 2 Vector trucks running Monday through Saturday, 8 hours a day, or 8 to 10 hours a day. And we will run that till the snow flies. So I know that we have some large blows, but they're 2 people running 2 trucks, and we're getting as many as we can. But once it gets full, it has to be dumped, and then it's back out on the street. So we're trying to get as many of those as we can. I was pretty happy with the Beach Safety Summit that occurred last Friday. We organized and hosted the Beach Safety Summit after last year's summit that was held in Grand Haven. We were able to get together with the Michigan Department of DNR, members from Berrien County all the way up to Ludington. We had over 25 folks there giving their impressions of how their different communities are handling beach safety. We also had a chance to talk to the Michigan DNR about their land use order that was in place this summer. So we've got some items that we learned from those groups, and we'll be rolling that out when we give our update to the council on November 21st. As a reminder, we also have our food truck workshop that will be set for next Monday at 5 p.m. in this room. The agenda has been posted to the web, and the calendar has also been added to the calendar. And lastly, we have our election tomorrow, starting at 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you haven't already got your absentee ballot, in which over 1,000 were sent out, please do come in tomorrow between those hours to come in and vote. And a big shout out to Megan Kiker, who in less than a couple hours will be back here in this building getting ready for the election. Again, I want to really highlight the work that Megan has done as a city clerk. This will be one of her largest elections with over 1,000 absentee ballots going out. So kudos to her and wish her good luck for tomorrow. And those are my comments.
Go, Megan, go. All right. Council comments. Let's go to the right. Joe.
A bit of an announcement. Last Thursday, October 27th, the South Haven Housing Commission received the results of their Public Housing Assessment System scorecard. I'm on the board and thought it would be beneficial for city staff, city council, and very important for residents to know how our local agency is performing its duties. As many of you know, this agency provides housing for low-income residents with an average income of $25,000. The results are a direct reflection on the leadership and the work of John Gill, the director. Their scorecard came out a 87 out of 100. More specifically are the following. I'll do it quickly. Financial, 25 out of 25, a perfect score. Management, this reflects again on John, 25 out of 25. That has to do with an independent auditor giving him that score. Capital Fund, 10 out of 10, based on timely spending, reporting, and administering of the program that allows the agency to make improvements and upgrades to the residents' homes over and above regular maintenance. On a personal note, I have listened to and observed John Gill for over 2 years now. He is dedicated and he has conviction to help the residents. Most importantly, he sincerely wants to help and provide good housing for those individuals that need a low-cost home in this town. John speaks to the residents with respect and concerns for their well-being. 2 weeks ago, I was fortunate enough, John took me to a couple of single-family homes in the community. One was a before and one was an after. I was amazed by the difference. They are remodeling and fixing up some of the existing single-family homes. Not only was he proud of what was being done, but the two workers inside were equally proud. I am proud of the work and the leadership John has demonstrated, and I'm also proud our community takes the resources to provide local residents with adequate housing. Thanks.
So I want to take a minute and talk about a concern I have. My impression is that our community is more divided than I have seen it since I've been on city council. And it seems to center around how we interact with one another. Too many times, the interaction starts with an assumption that the person on the other side has nefarious intentions. Sometimes those that are passionate in their beliefs can be blinded to differing perspectives. Not all developers care only for the bottom line, and just because a resident is not a full-time resident, it does not mean that they do not care for this community or their neighborhood. And just because someone works for the city, it doesn't mean they have an agenda against you or other members of the community. Everyone needs to be treated with respect, and I would ask that as we interact with one another, before we say something or hit send on that email, ask yourself, if you were interacting with someone who you highly respect, would you use different words? Would the tone of your message be different? If that is the case, I suggest pausing before sending that message or hitting send to make sure that the tone is what you intend. The issues that divide us will become a distant memory, but how we treat those that disagree with us will last a lifetime. That's it.
Well stated. Thank you.
No comment, just get out and vote tomorrow.
Take that. Mr. Arnold, what's going on at the schools?
All kinds of things. First, I want to kind of start at the beginning. When Dan was here from Liberty Hyde Bailey, he mentioned Ann Long. I wanted to just say thank you for your service to Liberty Hyde Bailey. Ann Long was awesome. I got to work with her for 2 years. I think George and Wendy worked with her. She's so good, and so she would be really missed. Ms. Placati's still here. I'm glad she is. I want to apologize to the LOCC. Having heard the presentation, I feel so bad that we ambushed you last time. You guys really put in a lot of work and very important stuff, and we'll definitely get to that next. And we're sorry we ambushed you last time. Leaves. My leaves haven't been picked up for 3 weeks, so they're not picking on anybody. They're working as hard as they can. The high school. The high school had its fall play last Friday and Saturday. It was called It's a Mad House. Katie Hilliard and Aaron O'Neill are the two staff members that directed it, and it was awesome. 47 students on stage throughout the presentation. It was a lot of fun. And then finally, good luck to Megan tomorrow. And everyone go out and vote.
Well said by everyone. Good night.
That's it. All right. All good? All good. So just, it's coming to our attention through a couple of different means that some residents are forgetting their manners when checking a short-term rental permit. So just As a reminder, if short-term rental units are required to post their permits publicly so neighbors can easily find the name of the rental agent or owner. They're required to post those in the window. And while it's permissible to go up, if you want to look at that to get that information and leave, that's fine. But to hang out, peep in windows, take photos in windows, loiter, attempt to open doors, that is, it's not neighborly, and quite frankly, it's illegal. So please be respectful. As a community, we pride ourselves in being open and welcoming to guests, so please ensure your actions reflect that. Be respectful to all of your neighbors. And if you have questions or concerns regarding rentals permits, be respectful when approaching the building. And remember, you can also get that information on the city's website. So we just ask that people, be respectful of your neighbors. That's all we're saying. So, and other than that, go vote. Thanks for everybody's comments tonight. It's been a long one, so I'll seek a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody.